Mr. Mayor, we are ready to start the meeting.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the 7 p.m. June 20th regular meeting of the San Mateo City Council. I will now call this meeting to order and ask you to please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. So for anybody who has not been back to a meeting in person, for those who are here, I want to say welcome back. And the council is now open for anybody else who is not aware yet. You are still allowed to attend by Zoom or to interact with us by telephone under public comment. But here I have a few things I'm going to read. We're excited to be here in person with options for those who choose not to be in person to still participate virtually. There are several ways to participate. For those attending in person, there are 3 options to sign up to speak. Number 1, complete a yellow request to speak slip and hand it to the clerk. And number 2 and 3, which we normally have, are not available tonight. So that is the only way tonight to register to speak with the clerk. Fill out the yellow form and hand it in to the clerk. If participating remotely, use the raise your hand feature in Zoom and you'll be called on at the appropriate time. If calling in via phone, press star 9 to raise your hand, and when called upon, press star 6 to unmute. These options for public comment will remain available until I close the public comment period for that specific item. I have a special announcement tonight with regard to Juneteenth. I'd like to add a comment regarding this new federal holiday. We do recognize the significance of the holiday and wish everyone honoring this important remembrance our very best. Currently, this federal holiday is one of several that are not days in which city operations are closed. Because we are operating and holding a city council meeting on what is observed as the Juneteenth holiday today, June 20th, I want to take a moment to recognize the importance of this date. Juneteenth is the longest running African American holiday and serves to acknowledge June 19th, 1865 as the date that news of slavery's end reached slaves in Texas and other states in the Southwest. It is a celebration of long-awaited and desired emancipation, and we honor this historic event with our best wishes to everyone celebrating this holiday today.
Mr. Mayor, would you like me to do roll call?
Oh, yes. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Could we please do the roll call?
Councilmember Rodriguez?
Here.
Councilmember Gothos?
Here.
Councilmember Lee?
Here.
Deputy Mayor Pappen?
Here.
Mayor Bonilla?
Here.
And if I may, through the mayor, I'd like to quickly introduce Martin McTaggart on my left here. This is the new Deputy City Clerk who will be coming to the meeting. So for the community and for City Council and staff, please welcome Martin.
Thank you. Welcome, Martin. Well, now our first order of business tonight is ceremonial, and we have a proclamation here tonight honoring HIP Housing on its 50th anniversary. I'm going to read the proclamation, and we have some representatives from HIP Housing here tonight. I'm going to go ahead and read the proclamation, and then I will present it to them. Whereas, for 50 years, HIP Housing has been an invaluable resource for those fighting to break the cycle of poverty and overcome homelessness, and whereas HIP, which is also known as the Human Investment Project, HIP Housing, was founded in San Mateo in 1972 with a mission to invest in human potential by improving housing as well as the lives of people in our community. And whereas HIP Housing's 3 programs, the Home Sharing Program, the Self-Sufficiency Program, and the Property Management Division ensure that there is a broad spectrum of affordable housing solutions for low-income individuals in San Mateo County. And whereas, in addition to facilitating home sharing arrangements, HIP Housing partners with local municipalities, private funders, banks, and other institutions to purchase and rehabilitate multifamily residential properties, creating decent, safe, low-cost homes to families and individuals. And whereas HIP Housing enables more than 1,400 low-income individuals to find stable and affordable housing each year and ensures the health and well-being of those who otherwise face homelessness. And whereas, in addition to providing housing, HIP Housing provides assistance to clients who are pursuing continued education to help increase their earning power and become financially independent. And whereas, it is with great appreciation for your mission to improve the lives of people in our community that we extend our best wishes for the lasting success of this worthy organization. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the City of San Mateo hereby recognizes and celebrates HIP Housing's 50th anniversary. Signed by me, the Mayor of San Mateo.
Good evening, City Council, City staff, and members of the public. My name is Lisa Diaz-Nash, and I am a proud HIP Housing board member. On behalf of HIP Housing staff, board members, and clients, and our president of the board, Shelley Pavella, we are very, very happy to be here tonight and would like to express our gratitude for this very meaningful proclamation. HIP Housing's mission, as the mayor said, is to invest in human potential by improving the housing and lives of people in our community. HIP Housing enables people with special needs, either from income or circumstance, to live independent, self-sufficient lives in safe, high-quality, low-cost homes. To achieve our mission, HIP Housing provides home sharing, the largest home sharing program in the country, a self-sufficiency program, and property development. We track our program impact very closely with an eye to always improving our client and partner services. Since our founding in 1972, 50 years ago, HIP Housing has served over 85,000 clients in San Mateo County. In the last 40 years alone, over 72,000 people have applied to our home sharing program, and more than 17,000 have been matched with a long-term, safe, affordable, low-cost home. In the past 30 years, more than 11,000 tenants have lived in our affordable properties. In the past 30 years as well, more than 650 households have received rental scholarships through our self-sufficiency program. And this year alone, we are helping more than 1,400 people find or remain in that safe, quality, low-cost housing. We thank the Council for prioritizing affordable housing in San Mateo and look forward to partnering with you forever on this important goal. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Okay, we will move on along the agenda. We're now at the consent calendar. Madam Clerk, could you please read the consent calendar?
With pleasure, Mayor. All matters listed under the consent calendar are considered by the council to be routine and will be enacted by one motion without discussion. If discussion is desired, that item may be removed and considered separately. Item number 2, Caltrain's Cooperative Implementation Agreement Amendment. And then item number 3, contracts with contingency component and update. Item number 4, citywide street rehabilitation package 3B phase 1 agreements. Item number 5, payment of capital costs of clean water program projects interim agreement. Item number 6, wastewater treatment plant supply of chemicals contracts. Item number 7, wastewater treatment plant supply of liquid emulsion polymer contract. Item number 8, wastewater treatment plant biosolids hauling and disposal agreement. Item number 9, wastewater treatment plant immediate action projects, package 3, bid rejection. Item number 10, wastewater treatment plant SCADA monitoring and upgrade project agreement. Item number 11, US 101, State Route 92, Mobility Hub and Smart Corridor Concept Plan, Alternative Congestion Relief and Transportation Demand Management Funding Application. Item number 12, Uniform Maintenance Services Agreement Change Order. Item number 13, Poplar Creek Irrigation Wheel Drilling Project Agreement. Item number 14, Vision Service Plan Amendment. Item number 15, Fiscal Year 2022-23 General Liability and Property Insurance Purchase Authorization. Item number 16, Compost Procurement Pilot Program Development Professional Services Agreement with San Mateo Resource Conservation District Agreement. Item number 17, Below Market Rental Rates, Sales Prices, and Unit Community Priorities 2022 Revisions. Item number 18, November 8th, 2022, General Municipal Election, calling the district election for candidates.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. At this time, I'd like to see if any member of the council would like to pull any item for discussion. Seeing none, then I will ask if there's any member of the public that would like to make comments on any item which is on the consent calendar tonight.
Checking in the room, and I have no hands raised or no items for this in the room. On Zoom, there are no hands raised, so we have no public comment on this item.
Thank you. In that case, I will close public comment on the consent calendar and ask council members for a motion.
I move to approve the consent calendar.
Second.
Okay, motion and second. Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Councilmember Rodriguez.
Yes.
Councilmember Gothels.
Yes.
Councilmember Lee.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Pappen.
Yes.
Mayor Bonilla.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you very much. Now it's time for public comment for items which are not on tonight's agenda. Members of the public wishing to comment on any item not appearing on this agenda may address the City Council at this time. State law prevents council from taking any action on any matter not on this agenda. Your comments may be referred to staff for follow-up. Public comment is limited to a total of 15 minutes. However, an opportunity for additional public comment may be provided later in the agenda if needed. Madam Clerk, do we have any public speakers on this item?
I apologize. I don't have anyone in the audience who wants to speak in the meeting, and I have no hands raised on Zoom.
Very good. Then I'm going to close public comment and go on to the public hearing. Item 18, which is a hearing on 500 East 3rd Avenue, known as Block 21, mixed-use project for project approvals. And we have staff. We have Rendell Bustos from staff tonight.
Great. Thank you, Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council, Rendell Bustos, Senior Planner, providing the staff presentation this evening for item 19, a public hearing for a mixed-use project located at 500 East 3rd Avenue, Block 21. Here's an overview of the project background that I'll begin the presentation with, pertaining to location, project details, project history, and public comments. So beginning with the project location, the proposed project is located on the full block encompassed by East 3rd Avenue, South Delaware Street, and East 4th Avenue and South Claremont Street, highlighted here in orange. This map also illustrates the location of the downtown Caltrain station, highlighted here in red, which is less than a quarter of a mile from the project site, as well as in green, the vacant lot located at 402 South Delaware Street, which the applicant requests for use of construction staging. So here's an aerial more specifically showing the Block 21 site, which consists of 11 existing parcels with a combined site area of just over 1.5 acres. The general plan's land use designation of the site is downtown retail core support, consistent with the site's zoning designation of central business district support, CBD/S.
I need to ask if you could please raise your voice a little bit, please. Thank you.
These are images of the existing structures and the existing uses on the site. Existing uses include existing dwelling units, restaurant use, retail, a gas station, auto repair facilities. An historic resources evaluation has been completed by the city's historic preservation consultant and finds that none of the existing structures qualify as existing historic resources. The applicant will also be required to prepare a Phase 2 environmental assessment for the gas station use as part of a proposed mitigation measure. The Block 21 project is a 6-story mixed-use building consisting of approximately 180,000 square feet of office uses, 111 units, residential units on the upper 3 floors, with a combined floor area of approximately 268,000 square feet. In addition, the project includes a total of 402 on-site parking spaces provided in 2 levels of below-grade parking, which the applicant also proposes to offer as public parking after hours. The project also includes new landscaping and street trees, as well as open spaces that serve both office and residential uses. So a bit of history on the project. The applicant filed the required pre-application in February of 2021, which was followed by a neighborhood meeting and planning commission study session later that year. The applicant then filed the formal application in October, and most notably revised the project to include an additional level of housing in response to planning commission input at the study session. And lastly, after completion of the project's review, staff brought the project before the Planning Commission in May as a public hearing in which the commission recommended City Council approval by a vote of 4-0. And this project in particular requires City Council action given that the building height exceeds 55 feet. This is a brief summary of the main topics conveyed in public comments sent to staff. They included a recommendation for changes to the design, larger units, additional parking, and a recommendation that the developer contribute to the construction of bike facilities. In addition to these comments, staff received 6 support letters for the project. So there's a roadmap of the coming slides focused on the applicable codes and policies. So beginning with the general plan, as noted previously, the site is zoned CBD/S, consistent with the general plan land use designation. The zoning code also provides a list of development standards, which are summarized here. It should be noted that certain standards have been modified via state density bonus law, which will be covered in coming slides. Specific to off-street parking, the project is within the downtown's parking district, CPID, or Central Parking and Improvement District. As a project in the CPID, the project is eligible for reduced parking standards and ways in which the project is able to satisfy off-street parking requirements. In particular, staff prepared a parking demand study, which since the Planning Commission meeting in May has been lowered to a ratio noted here, 1.94 spaces per 1,000 square feet of office uses, and that was based on responsive information from the applicant. This ratio is also lower than the zoning code standard office ratio of 2.6 spaces per 1,000. I do want to note that the applicant provided a response letter requesting that the ratio be lowered further, and this information has been forwarded to the City Council. Lastly, the CPID allows the project to pay in lieu fees for any required off-street parking spaces that are not provided physically on site. So currently, as proposed, the project would be subject to an in lieu fee payment for a total of 8 parking spaces. With respect to local master plan and local policy documents, the project is subject to the downtown area plan, which, similar to the general plan, outlines high-level goals and policies for downtown and downtown support projects. The pedestrian master plan lists recommendations for sidewalk widths based on a project's land use and street parking configuration. As noted and as listed here, the project complies with the minimum widths along East 3rd and East 4th Avenue, but not along South Delaware or South Claremont Streets. However, it should be noted that the zoning code, which supersedes the pedestrian master plan, requires 0 setbacks unless a setback is voluntarily provided for landscaping or open space. Lastly, the bike master plan lists infrastructural improvements to improve and support bicycle use throughout the city. Specific to this project's frontages, a separated bike lane is called for along the South Delaware Street and East 3rd Avenue frontages, and a bike boulevard consisting of pavement markings is called for along the South Claremont Street frontage. I do want to note that the bike master plan does not require individual projects to construct or fund proposed facilities. The project, however, does not preclude future bike improvements along these frontages, given that the street width would remain the same. So shifting now to affordable housing requirements. In compliance with the city's inclusionary requirements, the project provides 15% of its space density to the very low income category, and this equates to 12 units. This makes the project eligible for state density bonus law provisions. So to explain the density limits, starting on the left, the project's base density is 50 units per acre, and that yields the project site a total of 76 units as a base density. A provision of 15% of the base density to the very low income category affords the project an up to 50% density bonus, or an additional 38 units. So this results in a combined maximum density of 114 units. And so as proposed, the project provides 111 units, which is within the maximum combined density. In addition, in accordance with state density bonus law, the project is eligible for reduced parking as well as concessions and waivers. The 5 waivers are listed here, and staff has evaluated the waivers and not made any finding to deny the waivers based on life safety impact or any conflict with any state or federal law. In addition to the 5 waivers, the project is eligible for up to 3 concessions, which the applicant has requested 2, and these are listed here. The first is to increase the maximum building height by 19 feet 2 inches, and the second is to increase the maximum floor area ratio by 1.1. Generally, the state requires that concessions result in cost reductions, not have an impact to public health or life safety, and not be contrary to state or federal law. And so staff has evaluated the project's density bonus request letter and found that these findings can be made to approve the concession. I also wanted to highlight that with respect to the request to exceed the building height limit, staff determined that state density bonus law does preempt general plan limits, including Measure Y. And a second component in detail that staff evaluated was whether the concessions resulted in a cost reduction. And so based on information provided, the concessions do result in an approximate 15% cost savings. So this is the list of the project's required plan application types or entitlements, the first of which is the Site Plan and Architectural Review, or SPAR, for the proposed building, as well as relief from loading zone requirements. It should be noted that because the project exceeds a building height of 55 feet, the entire project is subject to City Council action. Second is a site development plan application, which is required for the removal of all on-site trees and all street trees around the frontage. And the applicant proposes to replace these trees with 27 new street trees along all 4 frontages. Next is a special use permit for a nearby lot at 402 South Delaware Street for use of construction staging. And the last entitlement is a tentative parcel map to merge the 11 existing parcels into 1 parcel. So quickly on design review, which is a critical component of the SPAR application, staff conducted design review based on feedback from the Planning Commission as well as the city's design review consultant, Canada Design Group. The applicant is present this evening and will be providing a more detailed presentation on the architectural design, but at a high level, the project is best categorized as contemporary based on its use of materials such as glass, aluminum, and stucco, as well as cement boards. So lastly, on environmental review, staff prepared an initial study and mitigated negative declaration, or ISMND, in compliance with CEQA. The MND requires adoption of an MMRP, Mitigation, Monitoring, and Reporting Program. And this lists mitigation measures to bring the project's impacts to air quality, biological resources, and others to a less than significant impact. The ISMND has completed its 20-day public review period, which ran from May 18th to June 7th. No public comments were received that warranted further analysis or resulted in any edit to the project's mitigation measures. Staff did, however, make clarifications to the project's bike improvements as well as construction staging, and so this text edit was posted online but does not require recirculation of the document. And as part of the initial study preparation, staff's transportation consultant, Fair & Pierce, prepared a transportation impact analysis, or TIA, analyzing the project's impact to traffic. The TIA finds that, in accordance with CEQA, the project does not result in any impact to vehicle miles traveled, or VMT, in that it meets the city's screening criteria. In addition, the TIA analyzed the project's level of service, or LOS, based on general plan requirements. And the project similarly does not result in any adverse impacts to LOS. The project does result in net new AM peak hour trips, but overall reduces the average daily trips when compared to existing uses. I did want to note that with regard to the TIA, it was flagged that on page 14 of the TIA specific to the Caltrain headways, which notes an even number of 30 to 60 minute headways. A more accurate description of the headways would be about 27 to 60 minutes. So staff would want to note that this edit would not result in any change to the analysis. Despite the lack of adverse traffic impacts, the applicant has voluntarily committed to implementation of a transportation demand management plan, or TDM plan, and so those measures are listed here, and those further reduce trips despite the lack of an impact. In total, the TDM measures, if implemented altogether, would result in an approximate 30 to 49% trip reduction. So with that, staff is recommending that the City Council adopt a resolution to approve the project's site plan and architecture review, site development plan application, and tentative parcel map, and a special use permit, and adopt the mitigated negative declaration and MMRP to assess the environmental impacts of the project. So this concludes staff's presentation. I did want to note that the applicant is present this evening and will be providing a presentation. In addition, Public Works staff is present this evening, and via Zoom, we have the city's transportation consultant, Farron Pierce, and CEQA consultant, David J. Powers, present this evening via Zoom. So happy to take questions for staff. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rendell. Do any council members have any questions, or would we prefer to hear the applicant's presentation before we go on to questions? Okay, good. We'd like to hear the applicant's presentation.
I echo Mayor Bonilla's thoughts this morning. We're excited to be with you in person. Also, congratulations to HIP Housing. We're one of the beneficiaries of their services. Our units at the projects across the street, HIP Housing helps manage them for us. So we couldn't do it without them. My name is Mike Field. It's good to be with you tonight. Are you going to do it for me? Thanks, Rendell. It's been a while. So we finished the last building that we had talked about some years ago. And as I was standing on the street corner, as we had finished 4th and Claremont, which was the red brick building, I remember looking at this block thinking, wouldn't it be interesting to see if something could happen over there? And that was in 2018. So here we are 4 years later, and we, pretty miraculously were able to get all property owners on the block to agree to sell. There's 40 owners in this block from different family members. Many of the properties have been inherited through multiple generations. There was a lot of tenants, a lot of residents. And so if I have a lot more gray hair, it's because of this project, no question about it. So it's been a long journey, but it's something that we poured a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into. So to start out first, I'm going to skip the About Us slide, if that's okay, Rendell, because I know you've got a busy, I saw your schedule tonight, so we're going to be brief. As Rendell mentioned, it's the block bound by Delaware 4th, Claremont, and 3rd. The site is approximately 1.51 acres. The square footages on the top line are incorrect. They're slightly lower. The project is 179,560 square feet of office and 89,378 square feet of residential. We have 111 apartments, of which 58 of them are one bedroom. So if you recall it all, the other two projects had mostly studios. Here we really tried our very best to get as many one bedrooms as we could into the floor plan. And those one bedrooms range in size from 675 to 754 square feet. And the rest are all studio units, and those range from 503 to 619 square feet. One of our targets on this project was to try and get the affordability level of the units as low as possible. So the upshot of that is low income breaks even and very low loses. And so they're actually a drag on the income of the project because they don't cover their own expenses. However, given the priorities in the community, what we heard, all the input we heard from planning a commission and other stakeholders was that we need the lowest possible income category. So that's what we did here. And so those 12 units will be very low income. And if HIP Housing is willing, will be managed by them. The building is 6 stories in height, and that was the surprise of a lifetime for me. When we went to planning a commission, and we were asked to include more housing. And in other planning commissions, that question had been talked about, but I was pretty shocked. And so then I went and started talking to members of the community, and no one said no. No one's, some said, I don't love it, but we need it. Some said, I love it, let's do it. But nobody said no. And so we went ahead, and with staff's help, we redesigned the project and added additional housing. Now, at this point, it's a real apartment building on top of a real office building. So we had to create separate lobbies, separate elevators, amenity space, outdoor space, grilling area, gym, all these things, because we went from, the apartments being anecdotal or secondary to it being a significant apartment building. And so you'll see those amenities in the floor plans to make the units as marketable as we think we need to. LEED continues to be a big part of what we do. All the bicycle parking, lockers, showers. We have 3 project entries, not only for flexibility, but also so that there's more ins and outs and pedestrian traffic going in and out on different spots on the building. We spent a lot of time on a design on this building. And so it's all in the eye of the beholder. But certainly in my career, this is the highest quality building I've ever designed in my life. So the first floor is GFRC panels, which none of our other buildings had. And then it goes into EFIS, which is a better version of stucco. And then, we treated the apartments differently, and we'll get into some of the renderings. But our main focus was to bring the pedestrian level low, to hide as much of the glass as we could from the pedestrian level, and to create these wonderful outdoor areas. I was out at 3rd and Claremont today, sitting in one of the benches, looking at this project site, and visualizing back what that block used to be like as I was sitting there, and a few other people were sitting in the benches, and who walks by, but a few people in the central neighborhood who I knew, and we talked for a minute. It's doing exactly what we had envisioned, of creating a pedestrian environment that's inviting, and I had a very good time eating my Reese's peanut butter cup there in the chair. But let's move on to the next slide if we could, Rendell. So I think I hit most of this. Rendell already talked about VMT, so I'll skip over that. Robust TDM measures, I'm going to talk about more a little bit later. I don't know if we pioneered, but our last 2 projects had the public nights and weekends, and this will as well. So, at this point, we're getting some critical mass when it comes to night and weekend parking at this block. Between these 400 stalls and the stalls under the other 2 buildings and the 5th Street garage that the city's building, there's going to be a lot of parking on this area. Let's go to the next slide if we could. Okay, so this is the 3rd and Claremont corner of the building, which is going to be, no, I'm wrong. This is the 4th and Delaware corner of the lobby. It's hard to tell because there's another entrance on this corner as well as the other corner I first mentioned. So this gives you a sense for the different materials. You'll see on the right, the darker materials is GFRC, which is made in a factory. It's incredibly consistent. It's crane lifted into place, and it's very interesting. It doesn't look like stucco. It doesn't look like stone. It looks like a GFRC, which you've seen before, and it's really those in construction would know it's an expensive material, but it adds a lot at the base of a building. The white is the EFIS, or the better version of stucco, and then the apartments have both metal panel, EFIS, and board. You'll know almost every window on the first floor has a canopy over it. Those are actually lit as well. So at night, those canopies will be really attractive. And we did our very best here by using the outdoor balconies and these other design elements. Again, although the building's taller than our prior buildings, we really wanted to keep everything down at the pedestrian level and minimize its impact. Go ahead to the next one, if you would, Rendell. So this is the corner of 3rd and Claremont. You can see here, and you'll see better from a couple other renderings, the building's brought back here pretty considerably. There's been a lot of talk about this glass element. And so this glass element, you can see is very narrow at the pedestrian level and then widens as you get out of the pedestrian level view. And the reason for that is it's a big floor plate and we need to bring natural light into the building. And so, again, we tried to minimize, generally speaking, a lot of the community feedback we get is they don't like big walls of glass. And so, our goal here was to minimize the glazing at the pedestrian level. So as you're close to the building, you won't feel the presence of that glass. Now, if you're across the street or down the street, you'll certainly see it in context. The other issue here is we had to identify the office lobby because you've got a lot of apartments. We're going to have a lot of people wondering where to go and how to get into this building, and we really needed it to be obvious. You can do the next one, Rendell. Thank you. I like having you do it better, just for future reference. You're much better at it. So this is just a view along 3rd Street. If you visualize the Arco gas station, the tobacco store, and then some of the other retailers that are there right now, we'll have all new street trees, street improvements. A lot of outdoor plantings, and so we feel that this gives you a better sense of what that GFRC looks like and how substantial it lends to the base of the building. Okay, that's 4th Avenue. You can see the first building that we built in this neighborhood there. So although they share some of the same language, they're very, very, very different from a material and architectural standpoint. And you'll see that built-in outdoor benches and planters, a little bit nicer than some of the benches we've done. We wanted to kind of mix it up a little bit. Next one, Rendell. Let's go to the next one. There's the residential entrance. So the residential entrance is on Claremont. Again, it has to be obvious. And so this building has its own residential lobby, its own residential elevators. It is completely separate from the office use. So it very much has, and we learned that. We learned that from the other 2 buildings. The first one, we interacted the uses a little bit, and neither use liked that interaction. And so we learned that we needed to really do a good way of dividing them. Go ahead and go to the next one, Rendell. Okay, next one. I'm not going to go through it much here, but there are huge outdoor balconies, not only at individual apartment units, but huge outdoor common balconies for the apartment users. And so if you take some time going through the plans, you'll see that the scale and size of these outdoor amenity areas for the apartment users. They'll be able to barbecue outside, watch TV outside, sit outside, and enjoy the day. All 111 units will be able to do that. So it's really going to be a remarkable apartment, a bunch of apartment homes. Okay, so project parking. So this has been an interesting journey for us. So the project parks 1.87 per thousand. And city's consultant's memo outlined a scale or a range at which a project like this could park in the downtown. And we worked with Hexagon as well to understand better how the parking in downtown at this particular project can meet the goals of downtown, which all of us understand. We want the downtown to be pedestrian focused, not parking focused, and we want to really set a good standard here. So for us, the fact that the project has no VMT impacts. One of the things that continues to be a little bit of a sticking point with us in Public Works is we do all these TDM measures in all these buildings. There's a significant cost and management in implementing these TDM measures. And we felt that yes, although the city doesn't have a process for providing us direct credit for those TDM measures, certainly given Hexagon's letter and given Fair and Pierce's range, this project should be parking at the lowest end of that range, especially given the fact that the TDM measures aren't even considered in Fair and Pierce's range. So if they were to be able to consider that, that would continue to push the range even below 1.87. So our ask tonight of the City Council, we discussed this a little bit with Planning a Commission, but unfortunately the issue hadn't been resolved with Public Works yet. And so it got delayed. Some of the Planning Commissioners definitely indicated support for this, and we would respectfully ask that the Council direct staff to park this project at 1.8 spaces per 1,000. And I believe that's it for my presentation, and certainly the whole team's here to answer questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Field. I think I do have a question. On the parking?
Yes.
Because questions came up, letters from members of the public. So this particular project looks like if it's parked at 1.87, I think, Rendell, you showed us a slide. How many spaces does that come out to be? It's
Through the mayor, with the ratio of 1.87 spaces per 1,000 square feet, that comes to, inclusive of the residential uses, a total of 402 spaces as currently proposed, again, including the residential spaces, with the 1.94 ratio as recommended by our consultant, 410.
okay, good, thank you. And Mike, I wanted to ask you, the project across the street, one you're just finishing, and the two projects there, how many parking spaces are over there?
She has that number in her head, I know.
Ms. Ring?
Ms.
Through the
Ring.
mayor. I don't remember the exact number, but they are parked at the higher ratio of 2.6 per 1,000, which was in line with what the city's code
Well, okay.
was previously.
Okay, I was looking for a number because people are
Yeah.
telling me there's just not enough in numbers, right?
Okay.
And I wanted to illustrate that, well, there's 400 actually being provided here between office and the residential number, and the numbers that were at 2.6, okay, right?
Yeah, that's a fairly higher ratio provided as part of those
Right,
projects.
so that's more. And the 500 public parking spaces that are being shown or going to be provided, they're being built right now at the Kiku Crossing parking garage, plus another 199 for the residents there. There's a lot of parking coming to this part of town. And not only that, but is the public going to be able to use those parking spaces at your buildings after hours?
Absolutely. Weekends, after hours, all 3 underground parking structures are available to the general public.
Okay, okay, good.
And as you recall, or may not, what the city asked us to do related to those garages, we will not benefit from the income of those garages, but the city wants us to operate them as if they were city garages after hours, and so any fee would be determined by city staff. So it's not up to us if we charge or don't charge, it's up to city staff.
Right. So, Rendell, I had one other thing. I wanted to look at your slide 20 once again. Thank you, Mike. I think that might be it. Oh, there we are, slide 20. And the TDM measure also, right, which shows on the bottom there that it could reduce trips by 30 to 49%, but I think, doesn't that also, didn't I see something about an actual, as a result of the TDM plan, reduction in parking necessary for the project? Did I see something about that in one of your slides here somewhere, Rendell?
Through the mayor, so the project is within the CPID, which is our downtown parking district effectively. There is no parking reduction permitted for TDM measures. I think it was a different slide.
Okay, I think I'm a little confused there. Okay, good. Well, thank you. Any other council members, questions here? Okay.
I just have
Yeah,
one question.
go ahead.
So, Mr. Field, on the building itself, you have some lights they're like stuck on the building. And the same thing was done on 4th and El Camino. Just wondering if you could consider a redesign of those lights, because they sort of blast lights straight out. And even when you're driving, it blasts sort of in your eye. And I was wondering if you could maybe consider a light fixture that maybe had light go up and light go down, but not at you.
Yes.
So I don't know if that's possible, but I saw the same design and I was like, I wonder if you consider perhaps a different light fixture. I know it sounds picayune, but
No,
it
it's
really
not
is.
picky. So one of the reasons we inlaid the lights into the window canopies on this building
Yeah.
is so it all shines down. And then as it relates to lighting coming at you, that's driven by city staff. So we have to produce a certain amount of lumens, and Rendell can help me with this because I'm way over my head at this point. But we have to produce a certain amount of light coming off of the building. But the majority of the light that we do now is to really push it to the ground as opposed to having it come out to you. But Rendell, I'll let you.
Yeah, so through the mayor, condition of approval is required for the project, and that the applicant is required to submit a photometrics analysis toward the building permit stage. And so there are minimum standards that the roadway is supposed to be lit. The applicant is required to do the full analysis of the roadway, but construct the improvements on their side of the street.
So
Hope that
you
answers your
need,
question.
let me ask you the direct question then. So you need the light that flashes out in order to meet the lighting requirements?
Yeah, there's a series of ways that the applicant can meet the certain standards to light the roadway. Certainly, staff can look at different fixtures to
Yeah.
meet the minimum standard.
If it's at all possible, because it really is like when you're driving, it comes right at you. And I think Kiko Crossing will be right across the street, and so it'll go
I
into
just talked to
residence.
them, who are the smart people, and they say the lights
You're
can't.
just the showpiece.
100%, and my wife will tell you that. We can make those lights point down.
Oh, that'd be fantastic.
They don't have to be a fixture that goes wide.
Super. Okay, just thank you for answering that. I think that was really
Great.
I know it's
Anybody else before we go to public? Sorry.
Oh, it's okay.
Okay. Anybody? Yeah, go ahead.
So I want to make sure I'm getting this straight here. So we're saying that the project reduces 276 daily trips and has no BMT impact, and that the TDM didn't actually factor into the consultant's analysis, and this project is also within the CPID district. So I guess I'm just kind of confused why we're talking about 8 spaces, right? And because what's the sticking point in terms of, is that a procedural barrier where TDM isn't factored into any reduction in parking standards? Is that an our problem?
Through the mayor, yeah, we don't have a policy that explicitly allows staff to reduce parking requirements based on TDM measures. Certainly in practice, applying TDM measures reduces trips and thus may reduce, the need for parking spaces. We just don't have a policy that outlines any metric or any allowance for staff to provide for that.
Okay, maybe that's something we can think about. And I guess I just wanted to ask more about the after-hours parking. I think that's a great asset. Did you want to say something about?
No.
Okay. Step away from the mic. So I'd like to just hear a little bit more in terms of our determining that fee and potential revenue sources. I'm just curious to learn more.
Through the mayor, I may call on Sue Ellen Atkinson, Principal Transportation Planner.
Hi, good evening, City Council members. Sure, I'm happy to answer that based on prior public access agreements for parking that we have, also with the applicant. Public parking is made available for after hours, so usually in the evenings and then on weekends. What is required is that the parking fees are in line with what we're charging in the downtown for public parking. In prior agreements, the revenue goes to the owner of the parking garage, not the city, so that would be the property management would have the revenue from that because it is their facility.
Okay, so we set the fees, but they collect the revenue?
We ask that the fees are in line with what we're currently charging, but then the revenue goes to the owner.
Ah, I see. Okay.
So I have one more question too. As I was looking at your slide 20 there, Rendell, I noticed the difference in the AM peak hours and the PM peak hour trips. And I think I know why, but could you explain, do you know the reasons for the difference? Or is there somebody here? who was brought by Wendy Hill, who could explain why AM peak trips are 134 and PM peak trips are 31.
Yeah, through the mayor, the TIA is a pretty dense document with a high level of analysis. I may call upon, through Zoom, Farron Pierce, who's the city's transportation consultant, to give a better answer than that.
Okay. I think it may be because the PM peak trips are more dispersed. People are leaving the offices at different hours, not necessarily during the commute hour. I mean, that's just what I'm thinking, but that's completely amateur guess.
Your instinct is probably in line with the analysis. The uses are also changing. Generally, the current uses are more commercial, neighborhood-serving uses, retail uses. It's shifting more toward an office and residential land use with just different occupancy.
That's okay. I'm good with that. Thank you very much. Okay, I think we're ready to go to the public.
I have two speakers in the room. We'll call up first. The first speaker is Eric Wolford.
Hello, City Council, and thank you for letting me speak to you today. And also thanks to the developer for the representation through Mike. I live 2 blocks from this project, and so it's near and dear to my heart. I also biked here today. I biked down from my house, down across the project, and down the city's separated bike lanes all down Delaware Street that the city's already built, and then crossed over Hayward Park and came down here. The 2 most dangerous parts of my commute here today were crossing El Camino, which the city doesn't have control over, and the segment just in front of this development between 3rd and 5th Avenues on Delaware Street. The original mitigated negative declaration on this project that was shown for public comment, as Rendell mentioned, included the language that this project would provide funding for either partially or completely the bike master plan improvements approved by the City Council, including separated Class 4 bike lanes on Delaware Street and 3rd Avenue. Subsequent to the public comment period, as Rendell mentioned, there was a change to that mitigated negative declaration that eliminated the provision or funding of those bike lanes on Delaware and on 3rd. And this project now only includes any planned bike offset or improvements to paint bikes on Claremont Street. And what I'd like to say about that is that both this project's parking garage exits onto Claremont Street, as well as the applicant's prior project, also on Claremont Street across the street. And I personally bike this area with my 2 young children, and I think anybody here who does bike in the city knows that it's one of the most scary feelings when you're watching your child bike in front of a parking garage exit. So Claremont Street is a dangerous place to do that, and I really would advise that the city prioritize and hold the developer accountable for the negative impact of having hundreds to 1,000 new people coming into this block every day by funding the bike infrastructure on Delaware and on 3rd. Another smaller comment is that there are actively 4 functioning restaurants and 12 street-level businesses on this block currently that will be taken out and replaced with office use. The issue is that this is an active block currently after hours. Mike noted that there were people there during the day. I noticed that too, but after 5 p.m. it's a ghost town because these active uses will be gone. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Michael Nash.
Boy, it's nice to do this live, isn't it? Good evening, Council. I have one comment. At a recent SMUHA meeting last Thursday, attendance impaired by the Warriors finals, there was a discussion raised about this building, and the consensus was that it really didn't fit So, applause to the great design work and great effort and the use of materials and all, but there was a general sense that there should be more in our design standards that think about what the overall look of downtown San Mateo was going to be, especially in consideration of the significant growth that we're looking forward to in the general plan. So the call is for the council to ask staff to really give that a hard look as we move forward, probably more in the general plan. This project seems to be pretty far down the road, but there's considerable concern that we're going to end up with a Babylonian style of architecture where everything's a little bit different, nothing really fits together. So I thought I'd bring that to your attention. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is James Newman.
Thank you. Just a couple comments and a question for the developer. General comments is that I have a business just down the street, and I've received very positive feedback from our patients who come from all over the peninsula, noticing the improvements in downtown San Mateo area. And I think the architecture that we've seen in the previous two buildings has been positively received. We're also concerned about still the number of day laborers that congregate around our retail businesses, and we would hope that as the city grows that there'll be better enforcement on making sure that people loitering on the streets goes back to the Worker Resource Center. So in all due respect, I feel that there's been positive developments with the developments thus far, and the city is changing, and this whole area, I think, would be benefited from the design that was presented. My only other question is, with the special use permit for the construction staging area, what happens to that? Is that part of the development, or is that going to be turned into parking? Is that owned by the developer, or what happens to that particular lot, which I think used to be the Union 76 station? Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, we have no other in-person comments. I'll move on to the Zoom. Oh. Okay. Next speaker is Lori Watanuki.
Good evening, Mayor Bonilla and members of the City Council. My name is Lori Watanuki, and I would like to add the following comments. The applicant is requesting an excessive number of concessions that will decrease safety and reduce the quality of life for residents of the project and others in downtown San Mateo. We feel the city is cutting too many corners with these concessions and waivers, and many of these are safety considerations. The proposed project, when combined with 405 East 4th and 406 East 3rd Avenue projects, would cause significant cumulative traffic and air quality effects. We would also like to suggest a second opinion on the 7 trees on Delaware Street by another arborist. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Lori Heiter.
Good evening, council members. I'm Lori Heiter, and thank you to the applicants for the presentation, and Rendell gave me a much better understanding of the project. One aspect that I don't think has been adequately covered is San Mateo's downtown is considered an historic district, listed on the National Register of Historic Places. And while there's been an historic study to determine the effects on individual buildings, I didn't find any assessment of the effects on the historic district. And the building is not in character with the city and its historic nature. The use of so many different materials and so many heights and so many features of the building make it visually very confusing. And it's right next to one of the oldest structures in downtown, the hotel. And this is a very abrupt transition. So I would request that the city consider in future design reviews, and for this project in particular, that you consider more traditional materials, simplified materials. There are other new buildings in San Mateo that have a much better transition from the historic buildings that we have in downtown. So I would request that there be an evaluation of the effects on the San Mateo Historic District from a visual standpoint, and maybe a better evaluation of the design guidelines. I echo Mike's comment about please develop some standards so that it's clear. I understand the need for contemporary buildings, but this is very close to downtown, and I think there needs to be some kind of transition. The other thing I would like to bring up is, do we really need more office space in San Mateo? I just read in San Francisco, only about 25% of the offices are actually filled, and that workers don't want to go back to work in an office. So do we need all the office space that we're building here? What is the vacancy rate in San Mateo? And I don't mean just what's leased, but how many buildings actually have people in them? The last thing I want to say is transit-oriented development is a little bit of a misnomer when the transit is not adequate. I took Caltrain for many years, shoulder to shoulder, not enough room, couldn't sit down, people could barely get on the train. So what are we going to do when we have so many more people trying to get on transit that is not adequate? Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers in the House? Seeing none, I'm going to move on to the Zoom comments. We have 12 hands raised. The first speaker is Ali Sapperman.
Good evening, Mayor, Bonilla, and City Council members. My name is Ali Saperman, and I'm here on behalf of the Housing Action Coalition to speak in strong support of Block 21. I've shared with the City Council our formal letter of endorsement. Thank you to the City Council and City staff for your leadership in bringing more affordable housing to the peninsula. This is an incredible project located close to existing amenities, incredible transit, and I'm very excited to see the addition of 111 much-needed new homes in San Mateo. Please support this project without delay. Thanks so much.
Thank you. The next speaker is Karen Rosenberg.
Hello, my name is Carrie Rosenberg from Greenbelt Alliance. Thank you all for this opportunity to speak and for your thoughtful consideration on this item. For over 60 years, Greenbelt Alliance has helped create cities and neighborhoods that make the Bay Area a better place to live, and we are excited to offer our endorsement to the proposed Block 21. Windy Hill Property Ventures' bold vision for this project would not only contribute to meeting the city's RHNA goals, but also target this middle housing. In Block 21, the City of San Mateo has the opportunity to create new infill housing that will contribute to the state of California's collective efforts to respond to our ongoing housing crisis. Greenbelt Alliance believes Block 21 will play a pivotal role in reimagining a more resilient and inclusive San Mateo for all residents to enjoy, and we are proud to give this project our endorsement. Excuse me, sorry. We hope its approval will inspire cities to redouble their efforts to grow smartly. Thank you for your time, and we hope you approve this project.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Kendra Ma.
Hi, good evening, council members. My name is Kendra Ma, and I manage the Green Trip program at Transform. We are a nonprofit organization committed to transportation and land use solutions that achieve more equitable ways to live and get around while promoting strategies for walkable communities with excellent transportation choices. So I'm here to highlight how the Block 21 project achieved our Green Trip certification, granted conditionally until the project is approved and built with the strategies currently included. So Green Trip certification recognizes and supports multifamily mixed-use developments which implement strategies that reduce traffic, parking, and greenhouse gas emissions while keeping our communities affordable. As you can see in the Green Strip project evaluation report and letter I just sent, we evaluated the expected driving by Block 21 residents, and our model projects that future households here are estimated to drive 69% less and emit 28% fewer GHG emissions than the regional average. So this project is implementing our traffic reduction strategy of 100% unbundled residential parking. And this project has a low parking ratio with parking available to the public on evenings and weekends. Along with ample bike parking, the transit service around the project site means future residents will not necessarily need a personal vehicle to get around. The area is serviced by Sandtrans and the downtown Caltrain station. So Block 21 is a welcome addition to the Green Strip family of projects, supporting more homes in a vibrant location. So we respectfully recommend that the Planning Commission, the City Council support this project and the low traffic strategies that it will bring to the city of San Mateo. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Ryan Monteshemi.
Good evening, San Mateo City Council. Honorable Mayor Bonilla, thank you for the opportunity. Regarding this project, I think infill construction is great, and we are really providing a place for people to live a car-light lifestyle. I'm going to focus my comments on holes that this project's development kind of illustrates in city policy and failure to incentivize this project to build or fund the improvements of the bicycle master plan and other plans. And I hope that this kind of provides an illustration of certain areas. I hope that city policy can help projects like this one in the future be even better. There is no policy compelling or incentivizing projects to develop bicycle or pedestrian facilities in the city, especially bicycle facilities right now. And I think the city should focus on changing that, especially through strong incentives. The developer initially did propose funding a separated bike lane on Delaware Street, and then retracted that proposal. That's my understanding from conversations with the city staff. Many folks I know were excited that the project would help construct sorely needed bike facilities and are concerned about the future of bike safety in the area. A group member of ours of Move San Mateo was hit by a car while biking with his kids just a few blocks away from here. Furthermore, this project is providing transportation impact fees, payments, but because city policy was constructed in such a way as to not allocate those fees to bike and ped projects when this project was started going through the process, the fees that this project is paying cannot go to bicycle and pedestrian projects. I think that illustrates a whole, and I'm glad that we've realigned our policy in the future, but it just kind of shows that this project itself, in terms of bicycle infrastructure, is just providing bike parking and a few share rows, which we know do not make a safe bike boulevard. I also think that we don't have a policy that outlines reduced parking for TDM measures, as Councilmember Lee mentioned, and I think we should consider that. Furthermore, Council's direction to take bikes off of B Street has resulted in a lack of clarity and priority for bicycles downtown, giving planners the impression that they should put on hold the bike master plan on Delaware Street, which I hope is not the case of the council. I would hope for some guidance from council that says that we should be building separated bike lanes on Delaware Street, where we would just need to remove a vehicle lane. Finally, I would hope that the developer would consider making a contribution to funding a combination of the following: speed cushions on Claremont, which are quite inexpensive and can help with some of the egress and ingress concerns from vehicles exiting parking garages. That would be a very low expense improvement that could help fund safer bike infrastructure in the city, or funding a study for protected bicycle lanes on 3rd or Delaware, or partially funding a study as initially proposed by the developer. Perhaps that could be done in exchange for the developer's request of 1.8 parking space ratio. I'm not sure if the city has the leverage in that negotiation, and generally do not support negotiations like that, but I am concerned at the lack of bike infrastructure proposed here. Thank you. Sorry about that.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Noelle Langmack.
Hi, this is Noelle Langmack. I'm the developer on the inclusion of TDM elements, the maximum inclusion of housing units, utilizing density bonus, and especially the inclusion of very low-income units. It looks like plenty of parking is being provided in this project and in the surrounding areas already, and I would agree with Ryan that really painting bicycle lanes onto a street doesn't protect bikers the way that a protected bike lane would. So if it is possible to trade and the developer funding a protected bike lane in exchange for the reduction in, I believe it was 8 parking spaces, I think that's something that the community would really value. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Vince Rocha.
Hello, my name is Vince Rocha. I'm Vice President of Housing and Community Development for the Silicon Valley Leadership Group, and we are very proud to endorse this smart growth infill project in downtown San Mateo. Projects like this are really key, both the jobs component and the housing component near Caltrain, and I want to address some questions and comments made about that. Is the leadership group in 2020 supported Measure RR, which many of you know, now provides a permanent source of funding. So Caltrain now has $100 million a year to more quickly electrify its fleet, run more frequent, cleaner trains, getting off diesel. So we're going to have cleaner transportation near projects like this. And also, you know, so that we'll have less crowded trains, more frequent trains. We also have to consider that creating jobs and housing here in a climate-friendly way, the way we're doing here in the Bay Area, is key because when we build jobs and housing in other states, we almost triple the carbon emissions per capita of residents. So making sure that we have the highest environmental standards here in California, where average per capita carbon emissions are the lowest, almost the lowest in the country, only a little lower in New York and DC. So really, the climate smart thing to do is to be building near transit in the climate friendly Bay Area in this temperate climate that we're so lucky to have. So we really wholeheartedly endorse this, but I would just want to say that it is amazing that we can create both jobs and housing in this development. Thanks.
Thank you. The next speaker is Gordon Strauss.
Hi, my name is Gordon Strauss. I am a longtime San Mateo resident. My family moved here in 1979. I went to Burrell and Aragon and then was away for a bunch of years, but came back to the area in 2005. And I always tell my friends and colleagues that had you asked me growing up if I would have moved back to San Mateo, I would not have thought the answer would be yes. But I think that the Planning Commission and the city have done such a great job over the last 40 years at making San Mateo a more vibrant and exciting place to live that that's one of the reasons I came back. Anyway, I just want to echo a little bit what the previous speaker said about all the benefits, both in terms of housing and having more jobs in San Mateo. I think both are great. And I love the fact that San Mateo is actually contributing to reducing the housing crisis through developments like this. And then the one other thing I just wanted to comment, I was laughing at some of the comments earlier about the kind of the transition to the historical district. I mean, I've been around here for 40 years, and that area has never been a good transition to the rest of the heart of downtown San Mateo. The idea that this would be a step back is crazy. I think it's pretty wonderful that we're going to have a development like this. I strongly back it. Thanks.
Thank you. The next speaker is Olga.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Good evening, council members. I am a San Mateo resident, and I have 2 comments. I noticed that during the developer presentation, you have skipped the street view on Delaware. It appeared very briefly, and I couldn't help but notice that the setback was very small for Delaware. I would like to ask the developer to provide a setback of at least 20 feet on Delaware, since it's a very busy street and 20 feet is really a minimum, which will allow for sufficient space to plant trees, put flower beds, and most importantly, to keep pedestrians at a safe distance from the moving vehicles. Safety is very important, I'm sure we'll all agree. And in general, so that people have a pleasant experience of walking down our streets. I go to downtown often, I walk there, and it seems like we're getting more and more people every day. I see people bumping into each other. If two people meet on the sidewalk and just stop to say hi, that creates a traffic jam. So we clearly need more space for pedestrians. And my second point is parking situation is very bad in downtown. People who live in San Mateo don't just need to go to work, and I understand that close proximity to Caltrain solves that problem. But people enjoy many parks and trails and beautiful adjoining cities. People go to Napa Valley, sometimes visit their friends. They will buy cars. We need more parking. Those are my two comments. Thank you.
Thank you. I have 3 remaining speakers. I wanted to ask if Oris Harmon, I think you may have accidentally lowered your hand. Oh, very good. So we have 4 remaining speakers. If there's anyone else who has not spoke who wishes to speak, you need to please raise your hands now. As of this moment, Oris Harmon will be our last speaker. Next speaker is Peter Mandel.
Thank you, members of the City Council. My name is Peter Mandel. I just wanted to briefly discuss the parking situation. Augmenting what the last speakers mentioned, there's a shortage of parking. And by this project and the other projects that have been recently approved, we're building ourselves into a corner. It's great to promote the use of transit, to encourage the development of offices and residential units, which assume the occupants will use transit, but it's not reasonable to assume that there's only half a space for every unit, that where will those people park their car? Even if they can use transit to go to work, transit for shopping, transit for other purposes, if they have own an automobile, there's no place to park, which will impact the adjacent streets. Similarly with the office parking. Yes, there's it's not as providing as many spaces as the nearby projects, but even the spaces they're providing, many of them are compact spaces, which assumes that there's going to be a reduction in the size of cars. And worse yet, they have what's called tandem spaces, which means the cars are parked nose to tail, which only means that one of the cars can never be moved unless the other adjacent car is moved first. So they're not really providing efficient or sensible parking. I think that there's a need for additional parking downtown, and I think this project is not contributing to the needs of the community in terms of overall parking. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is George. George, please unmute yourself.
Hello, okay, that worked. I'd just like to note on the setback and pedestrian master plan that the narrowest sidewalk on this project fronts the busiest street, which is Delaware. In terms of that sidewalk on Delaware, there is a bus stop, a Samtrans bus stop, currently at Delaware and 3rd, just catty corner from this development location. Has the developer attempted to coordinate with Samtrans for a possible new bus stop and bus turnout sidewalk indent in front of Block 21 along Delaware? And in terms of the sidewalk tree canopy, on the projects the developer did previously at 405 4th and 406 3rd, there really are not enough trees there, significantly short of trees to provide a full canopy. Nothing like the Gateway or what the Metropolitan Apartments projects achieved in terms of shade and tree canopy. I mean, I think they set the standards for excellence in terms of, setback and development. To the council, please don't reduce parking requirements and fees, even if they don't incur vehicle costs, which I somehow doubt and has been voiced by others this evening. You'll need those funds to fund, you'll need that money to fund other transportation considerations like bike lanes, fully separated bike lanes. Now I'd like to make my main point. A building taking up an entire city block and displacing long-term existing retail space, including 4 existing local eateries, should most definitely provide for ground floor neighborhood retail use. One of those eateries is the long-established and pretty popular Wing Fat Chinese restaurant. Highly recommend their barbecue pork if you haven't tried it. I know the developer points only to Class A opportunity at this site. That's just flat out wrong. There's a need for affordable transitional neighborhood retail that grows with the local population. But even before that, just the act of displacing without replacing existing retail will have an immediate detrimental effect on the walkability of the adjacent San Mateo Creek Gateway and Sunny Brae neighborhoods. City planning should be seeking to enhance the walkability and convenience of these near satellite neighborhoods, not diminish them. You can't defer street activation to another day, as they mentioned at the Planning Commission, and hope that another project is going to do this while this one doesn't. You're setting a debilitating precedent right now. The goal should be to activate the ground floor of this massive building, not just add a shiny new glass and concrete wall to the neighborhood. And to do that today with this project, and not defer to somebody else's development in the future. I think they call that OPP on Wall Street, right? Other people's property. When precedent and direction would already have been set at this meeting today. Please make sure that we get neighborhood retail, ground floor neighborhood retail in this building. If he wants Class A.
Mr. George, you're out of time, please.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Madam Clerk? Can I ask you, how many more speakers do we have?
We only have Brian Myers is next, and then Oris Hillman, and then Jordan Grimes is our last speaker, and then public comment will be closed.
So there's at least 3 more speakers.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm thinking that I'm going to have to ask, Mr. City Attorney, can we take a break during the middle of public comment?
He's going to go meet with the developer for my
whoever that is.
If you wish to take a break.
Yeah, we do need a break right now.
That's less of a legal issue, but you're certainly able to take a break if you want to.
Okay, thank you. We'll come back to public comment shortly. Thank you all very much. 5 minutes.
Yeah, all the hands are up there. They've been hanging in there. And this is typical. It's like that. Heard that the county Board of Supervisors meeting, this is the most raise your hand now. That's how they do that. So I'm going to try that and see how that goes. See if I get in there. So, but you see how many, it's like you've got to allow the person to talk, lower their hand, then remove permission to talk while you're doing the timer and taking notes about what they're saying. So it's just like, you get into a rhythm kind of doing it, and it actually happens faster on the Zoom, but usually the speakers are pretty close to me, sometimes in person. Slowly walk down, and so it just adds, more minutes to the meeting, but it can be kind of substantial. So, Erin is really good about putting up a placard or something like that. So. Yeah, I think so. I was going to invite you, Martin, to go ahead and watch the next staff presentation. She sends it just so you have time now. And I don't think we're really going to have public comments, except for DSMA. I see Cheryl Angelis on. So we'll see. But we don't have a whole lot. There are only 18 people. 13 of them commented on this item, so there's only 5 others. So, and so you note when they go into break, and then when they come back. Yeah. How's it going for you? Did you guys tell them not to shoot wide angle? You can see all the stuff, and I'm going like, no. Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, 5 minutes is passed. We're going to bring the meeting back to order. And Madam Clerk, could you please proceed with the next speaker?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Our next speaker is Bri Myers. Bri, if you could go ahead and unmute yourself.
Thank you, Council, for giving me the opportunity to speak. I live close to downtown and regularly walk, bike, and scooter that area by myself or with my young kids. This development is also only blocks away from my child's neighborhood school, Sunny Brae Elementary. I ask that the Council require the streets fronting the property, Delaware, Claremont, and 3rd Street, to have traffic calming features and consider prioritizing a protected bike lane added to Delaware. The corner of 3rd and Delaware is already quite dicey as a pedestrian. Pedestrians have to be on extra alert when walking that area, as so many drivers aren't looking for cyclists or pedestrians. Instead, drivers are focused on racing to go through that intersection on a yellow light, making a rolling stop at a red to turn right. And this rushed, speeding behavior makes the intersection dangerous. It's awesome we are adding more housing and infilling this underused property. This is a transit-oriented development, and being so, we need to make the streets surrounding the property safer for cyclists and pedestrians, and the residents that are going to live there. If the streets are safer for cyclists and pedestrians, more citizens will choose to take active transportation versus driving. But if we keep the status quo, citizens will just keep driving, as walking and biking around Block 21 is unsafe. As the price of cars and gas and car maintenance continues to increase, more citizens will choose to own fewer cars and choose to take the train, bike, or walk. I ask the council to please require traffic calming features be installed on all 3 surrounding streets and focus on adding a protected bike lane on Delaware that will serve students and citizens on their active commutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Aris Harmon.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, esteemed council members and staff. I am calling in from San Bruno. Thank you for maintaining the hybrid meeting format to afford that opportunity. I lived in San Mateo for about 6 years. My spouse and I moved to San Mateo right around the time we got married. I am enough of a land use and development wonk that I have ended up as chair of the San Bruno Planning Commission up here. Though to be clear, I'm not speaking on behalf of the body. I'm primarily speaking tonight as a member of Urban Environmentalists, an organization whose mission is to address the intertwined crises of climate and economic inequality by transforming our cities into inclusive communities designed around people rather than cars. I'm also an employee of Tesla Energy, and I worked for quite a few years at the old Solar City building near College of San Mateo, and depending on what happens with offices, maybe I'll be there again. And of course, I still visit my friends in San Mateo regularly, and I'm a fan of the downtown. Shout out to Verstal and Curry Up now. I love my home here in San Bruno and have committed myself to serving our community here. But to be completely honest, when Plymouth and I began house shopping, we looked in San Mateo first. We loved our home there too. It was a modest duplex that had been grandfathered into an R1 neighborhood. Even as successful engineers, we could not make our budget work to buy a house in San Mateo. San Mateo County has, unfortunately, in the last decade or so, created something like 10 or 11 jobs for every new housing unit. And so, of course, the price of housing has skyrocketed upwards. I will cop to playing a role in that. My spouse and I are effectively gentrifiers in our own neighborhood, having bought a home from a working class Hispanic family who had owned here since 1940. The best we can do right now is fight for policies that bring an end to the housing shortage and the displacement it causes. It's really heartening to see a proposal like this where the amount of housing in office is more in balance, and especially with a design that is so environmentally thoughtful. I can only wish that more cities, including my own, see proposals like this over the coming years. I would encourage you to support the project without delay.
Thank you. Our last speaker is Jordan Grimes. Go ahead, Jordan.
Good evening, Council, Honorable Mayor. My name is Jordan Grimes. I'm a lifelong resident of San Mateo and a lead member of local housing advocacy group Peninsula for Everyone. Just wanted to chime in quickly to share our strong support of the Block 21 project. We're very happy to see the increased unit count. Really grateful to Mike and the team at Windy Hill for their responsiveness to increasing the housing component given our housing shortage to the maximum allowed under state density bonus law. And I hope we'll see more projects utilizing it in the future. The 15% VLI component in particular is badly needed. The area median income for a family of 4 in San Mateo County rose this year to a whopping $166,000 per year. So we need every VLI unit we can get our hands on. The TDM measures, Caltrain and Samtrans passes, unbundled parking, bike facilities are exceptionally good. Windy Hill has really gone above and beyond here. Very happy to see them. With regard to parking, there isn't a shortage in downtown, but wayfinding could be a lot better. Redwood City does a good job of this in their downtown. We should consider taking a page out of their playbook. There are a lot of existing lots and garages that frequently have spaces, but people don't seem to be aware of for some reason. So we could do a better job on that. On the topic of the building's aesthetic appeal, I personally really enjoy it. I know that others do as well. I know that some people don't. Various mixes of building types and designs are normal in cities, and I think the current design is entirely appropriate here and will make a nice addition to the other styles in downtown. And then on a somewhat related note, I did want to say I disagree largely with George's comment, except to concur with him in the belief that the best barbecue pork in the city can be found at Wing Fat. And you can find their new location just across the street in the Gateway Common Shopping Center next to 7-Eleven. So on that note, I'll just say I really hope you'll approve this project tonight. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There are no other speakers.
Thank you very much. Then we're going to close the public comment period, bring it back to the council. I see Councilmember Rodriguez ready to go.
Yeah, I just had a question for the applicant. Would you be willing to fund the bike lanes? Why the change from the original plan?
So I feel a little bit set up. We redesigned the whole project to put bike lanes on Delaware. We had the garage exit on Delaware. We had shipping, receiving on Delaware. We put it all on Claremont. The downtown bike plan is not far enough along for us to be able to fund anything. We don't know what's going to go there. The city staff needs to develop that. And so from that perspective, we are absolutely in lockstep with the community, with you, and with city staff in developing a bike plan that is second to none in downtown San Mateo. It serves all of our interests. And so to that end, we're absolutely open to continuing to participate like we have. Mm-hmm. We've voluntarily done pedestrian improvements in downtown San Mateo with truncated domes and new curves. All that stuff we do voluntarily. All the TDM measures we do voluntarily. The garage night and weekends we do voluntarily. So I'm a little passionate right now about the fact that we're being told that we're not stepping up to the plate in downtown when all of these things we provide voluntarily. And this project alone will provide over $10 million of fees to the city of San Mateo, $2 million of which are for transportation improvements. So we're open to it. We're definitely have aligned interests. But there is currently, as we stand here today, not the ability to fund a bike design and construct bike lanes on Delaware. Further, we already do the sidewalks, we already do the light poles, we already do all the other stuff. So how far do you want us to go for one project? How many streets do we need to improve?
Yep. Okay, so I got a couple thoughts. So first off, we want you to go far. Yeah. But so to your credit, and I was going to say some of this during my comments, but I think it's safe to say, at least from a lot of the neighborhood residents that I speak with, that Windy Hill is an exemplar in terms of listening to the community, working with our community, being partners, not just come in, make your money, and move out. You're repeated partner in developing our downtown, so we definitely appreciate that. And kudos where kudos. Not only that, but you help donate money to our schools, HIP housing, exemplary record. So that being said, could you set aside some funds so when we do catch up, like you said, that we need to do, that we would be able to have a jump start on those bicycle improvements?
Yeah, I mean, I can bring up the slide that outlines the fees that we'll pay, that this body has delegated that we need to pay as part of the development. The fees are twice what they were 3 years ago. So the fees are quite high. And what I would like to see with the downtown parking plan is for it to be developed through additional funds that I'm willing to provide so that we have a cohesive downtown development bicycle master plan. And so if the city needs funds in order to finalize the bike plan, I'm absolutely 100% behind that. But I'm not willing to write a blank check for a bike lane to nowhere.
So I think we're definitely in alignment there. We don't want a bike lane to nowhere. But on the other hand, I think that's it's not either all or nothing. I think there has to be some way to work something out where you get the insurances that we're not just taking extra money, but because we need to have our ducks in a row too. But I think that there could be alignment somewhere where there's agreement that works for you and your interests, because I know that you want your residents to be safe.
To use the bikes.
Yeah. So you can not have to build those eight parking spaces. So I think it's in everybody's best interest that we can somehow get there.
Through the mayor,
I agree.
If I may add a comment.
Yes.
So I just wanted to make it clear that just legislatively, the city can't require the developer to construct the bike lanes, and any kind of contribution that the developer would make as part of this project or a future project would be entirely voluntary on the developer's part. I think we also need to be just a little careful in the way that we ask the developer for a voluntary contribution in the context of a project that's before the city council for approval.
Sure, thank you.
Yeah, I was asking for the voluntary contributions. I wasn't saying I wasn't making any threats or anything like that.
I didn't perceive it as a threat.
Okay. That's all I appreciate.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Rodriguez. I'd like to actually maybe pick up where Councilmember Rodriguez just left off, because I'm listening to this whole conversation, and we got a lot of public comments in support of housing, in support of the building, in support of the use in general. But then we got other comments, and we got a lot of comments about bike lanes, bike infrastructure, safety for bicyclists and pedestrians for that matter. And you just expressed yourself an interest in having all that bicycle parking space you have in your building being used by bike riders, right? And it's going to bring your TDM plan, which I think is a very progressive TDM plan, to full fruition, which has the ability to cut maybe 50% of the trips that would otherwise be in this building, due to the proximity to the train, due to the bikeability of downtown, due to lots of different factors that are laid out in the reports by both Fair and Pierce, and I think another one by Hexagon. So I just want to see, and of course, voluntarily, I think I hear you saying you're interested in participating. So I want to ask, if I were to ask you to help us fund our study for the protected bike lane, let's say I asked you for $50,000, would you be interested in helping us with that?
So let me just clarify for a moment. So a study for the bike lane around my building or in all of downtown?
No, I think we're talking about study of the protected bike lanes on 3rd and Delaware.
Okay, I would expand that even, and I would say that I would be willing to contribute $50,000 for the city to use at its discretion for the development of bike facilities throughout San Mateo, but more specifically throughout the downtown. I don't need to limit it in front of my buildings. My interest is that the bike lanes make phenomenal sense. I agree with the bicyclists that came here today. Biking on Delaware, we have lights, horns, arms, I think that's all we have, on every garage entrance on my buildings. I have 5 kids, the oldest is 12. We have lights, horns, and arms whenever a car goes in and out. And don't worry, neighbors, the horn is not the kind of horn that's on the train. It's one that will notify a pedestrian. So we take the safety seriously. I agree that Delaware right now needs to be looked at. We need to figure out how to get bikes around this area. I had a difference of opinion. I thought the bike lanes should be on Claremont. Some people don't. So yes, to answer your question, we would be willing to contribute $50,000 towards the city's continued development and production of a cohesive bike facilities throughout the downtown.
Great. I think that will help us quite a bit with the stuff, because I know that while we're looking at doing the work on Claremont, as is the design, we do need to make Delaware safer. 3rd and Delaware are well-traveled corridors, lots of automobile, truck traffic, and so forth. So we're going to be looking at that. And I understand in speaking with the city manager earlier today that the city is open to studying those areas for providing better safety infrastructure. So thank you. I appreciate that. That done, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to come back with some other things. I'll let other council members kick in with anything they may have here. And if there are any other questions, or if you want to start with comments.
Well, I'll just start with comments. Unless there's more questions, I don't want to impede it. I want to make a couple comments, very positive comments, so everybody take a breath, about the project. I want to say something about Windy Hill, and I think that it was a Herculean effort to bring together 40 owners to try to do something creative here that not only gives us office space, but housing, and a significant amount of housing, including very low-income housing. All of those things are important, I know, to this council, if I may be so bold as to speak on your behalf. But so for me, I'm quite impressed with the creativity that came with the project. I don't have anything to add to the conditions for approval, and I am inclined to approve the project. How about that for being brief?
I like that. Thank you very much. Anybody else? Go ahead, Eric.
It's ever since my time on the planning commission, we always have kind of debates on what design is good, what is bad design, what is functional, what's not, and it really is into the eyes of the beholder. I mean, I'll be walking down the street with my wife and I'll love something and she hates it and vice versa. And so one thing that I've learned is that we're never going to have a design that everybody likes, and that's just a reality. I really personally like this design. Every time I walk by the previous development sites that Windy Hill worked on, I really think, wow, this is a huge improvement from what it was. I mean, I'm not a big KFC fan. I'm definitely not an Arco fan. This is an area of San Mateo that's really unsightly. And it's underutilized. When you can come in and create and do that, put in the effort, which I can't even imagine how hard it is to get everybody to agree. And you can see what happens when they don't agree for that other project, and you just have like the little strip of restaurants, and then everything else is kind of fully developed. It's really hard to do that. And one more thought I have on back to the designs is that just because we have a amazing historical downtown, which I think we all want to preserve, I don't think that dictates like what type of the type of architecture everywhere, especially on the outskirts of our downtown. When I love historical architecture. My son's school at Episcopal Day is the main building is a very, very historical building next to one of the oldest churches in San Mateo. Yet when they chose to expand, they did a very tasteful, modern expansion. And every time I walk by it, I really get a sense like, you know, this is the old and the new, and it matches very well. And so when I see this building, I mean, is there a couple things I would change personally if it were my building? Yes, but I really like it. So that's just, some people like it, some people dislike it. But overall, what I'm thinking about is San Mateo a better place with this building or without this building? And I think it's a resounding yes, that once this is done, San Mateo is going to be a better place. And I'm not even talking about, you know, tax revenue or you know, homes or anything like that. I'm talking about just utilizing this property that's kind of unsightly right now. So, and I'm very appreciative. I'll just reiterate the comments. This developer is an exemplary developer with our city. They are not like 95% of the other developers that come in. And I think you do see some people speaking against this project and calling in, but you don't see any neighborhood associations really here in full force. And I've spoken with some of the leaders of some of the affected neighborhoods, and I think the reason is because, you know, would they maybe want some changes? Yes, but overall, I think that they know that this is not going to be the impacts are not going to be as bad as you might be led to believe from some of the comments, and I tend to agree with those. So I'm going to be supporting this project.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Lee.
I'd also like to applaud Windy Hill for being a long-term community partner. You have a really strong track record listening and prioritizing community input. My understanding about the history of the bike lane was that at one point it was erroneously believed to be a requirement, but upon further analysis, it was not. a requirement for mitigation. And so that makes your contribution, your voluntary contribution, that much more meaningful, that you came back to the plate. And you did so with a holistic view. And I think that to the point from one of the speakers who mentioned the importance of the surrounding neighborhood getting some of the upgrades and improvements. That is something that council is interested in pursuing. It is one of our many council strategic goals in terms of how we structure our community benefits. But I think that in many cases, it's important to strike a balance between the improvements that are made in the directly surrounding neighborhoods or blocks, and then also looking at networks as a whole and community assets as a whole. And so I appreciate, Mike, your thoughtfulness about treating our downtown bike program and network from a holistic standpoint. I think it's also worth mentioning that not one of the 40 owners, that includes the commercial tenants and the residents, came out here to oppose the project. And my understanding is that a lot of care was taken to transition the tenants very gently and with a great deal of consideration and support. And that is also a really important aspect of the behind-the-scenes project planning, and that I think makes for good neighbors. So thank you for that. And I also wanted to just make sure that we're clear on the facts in the record here. This project did not max out on the total number of 3 concessions. In fact, only 2 of the 3 concessions are being asked of us. So I think it's important that we work with a clear set of facts when we're talking about projects. And so, from my perspective, in terms of the parking delta, that very well could have been framed as a 3rd concession, but it wasn't. But when we look at the amount of additional above and beyond work that was done to create a TDM program that wasn't even required or factored into the parking analysis, it seems very well justified to keep the parking ratio at the low range from my perspective. So I very happily support this project, and I thank you for the additional investment.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Goethals.
Kudos to the applicant for the hundreds of hours of outreach that went into preparing for tonight. And this is a project that I think will enhance downtown San Mateo, make for a better walking environment for the people who live in Central to come to downtown. For those reasons, I will be voting for this project. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you very much. Now, I'd like to add a couple of comments also. It's important to note that while every one of the council members sitting up here is acutely aware of the housing shortage that we've been living through here in San Mateo for longer than 20 years. It's ongoing. It's sadly, despite all the housing we've built, we've all seen our RENA number, and we know that the demand is out there. People are still clamoring to try and live in San Mateo because they work here, they have family here, parents have children, grandparents have children and grandchildren. People want their family to be able to live somewhere near them. We have a lot of low-wage people living here, and those low-wage need not only housing, but low-income housing. And this project is offering 12 very low-income units, which is special. Those are hard for us to come by when we're seeking to get affordable housing in San Mateo because they require a little extra subsidy. And this developer, though, saw the value in doing that for the community here in San Mateo. So I appreciate that, and I thank Windy Hill for doing that. I also want to mention that a lot of people spoke about parking, but I know that if you look at the parking analyses that were done, and I looked at the analysis and I came to the conclusion that based on what I know about the number of parking spaces that I brought up when I was asking questions earlier, there are roughly 1,300 parking spaces between this project, the other project to the west of it, the next block with the 2 new buildings on it, and the 500 public spaces, as well as another 199 spaces for the unit at Kiku Crossing. That's about 1,300 spaces coming online in this area, right here within these few blocks. I don't think it's underparked. And what I know is that preferences are changing. A lot of people just can't afford a car, for one thing. Since they don't need a car, they would rather use alternative modes of transportation. Downtown is walkable, it's bikeable. I heard somebody mention a scooter. We need to make sure it's really safe for people to be able to do that. And I heard Mr. Motoshamy, when he was speaking, suggest that we should create a policy to incentivize developers to include bike and pedestrian improvements with their projects, which is a really smart thing to do. We don't have a policy like that right now. We do have the TIF, the Transportation Infrastructure Fee, which had not previously allowed us to use that money for bike and pedestrian improvements, but the policy has been changed. It was changed after this project came to the city. Now, if a new project is approved, that project will be allowed. The funds that come from that will be allowed to be used for bicycle and pedestrian improvements. However, the developer here stepped up. I asked them if they would make a contribution. They didn't have to do this, but I think that the developer saw the value in also, digging a little deeper, okay, to take care of this community, which has approved a number of developments from this developer in San Mateo, and I have to say, I like them. They're good developments. I do appreciate the architecture. It's as Councilmember Rodriguez said, this is the outskirts of the historic downtown. And I think this design really does good at making the point on the one side of the building that there is office here, and yet on the other side of the building that, well, there is residence here, right? The residential aspect is not an afterthought. It's a big part of this building. So, and it's important. The Planning Commission asked for it, and this developer said, wait a minute. Yeah, I think I can do that. That was a big step. This is something that we need because we've been creating a lot of jobs downtown, but we need to make sure we're creating housing downtown too, to make it as vibrant and viable as it possibly can be going into the future. Additionally, I want to say that I think we need to create a transportation management authority in our downtown area. It's something I heard some talk about a few years back. I know that we have different forces moving back and forth downtown, but I really think that given all the new development that we're seeing coming to us downtown, it would be good to have concerted effort to manage transportation and measure transportation from different uses as they come to downtown and exert some sort of guidelines around what kind of or what numbers of vehicles coming to and from can be done, because downtown is a place where transportation demand measures, management measures can be used to reduce vehicle traffic to a very great degree. So that said, I support this project. I support it strongly. I look forward to seeing it get started in just another couple of months, and I intend to approve it. So that said, I think, do we have a slide with all the different resolutions that we need to approve to make this happen, or ordinances, whatever they are?
If I may.
Yes, thank you,
Mayor,
Mr. Trin.
While that slide is being brought up, if you wish, you can simply move the staff recommendation instead of repeating everything in the recommendation between all the entitlements.
I think it's just good if we can all see these things, though. And I think somebody's about ready to move the staff recommendation here.
I think we got unanimous here, so I'll make a motion that we adopt the staff recommendation. And Mr. Bustos, I think you're bringing that up, aren't you?
Second.
You're fabulous.
And
second? All right.
To the mayor, I think there was also the contribution, the voluntary contribution from the developer as well. I think that's part of the motion, I believe.
I won't forget that part of the motion. Mr. Field.
And there was the one parking thing as well.
So through the mayor, the potential change would also be the reduced parking ratio of 1.87 thousand.
Yes, thank you. And I do approve personally that reduced parking ratio to 1.87.
So we'll make that a part of the motion, along with the voluntary contribution of 50,000. And with those two additions, we'll adopt the recommendation of staff as put forth.
And we have a second?
Second.
Second stands. Roll call vote, please.
Deputy Mayor Pappen?
Aye.
Councilmember Goethals?
Yes.
Councilmember Rodriguez?
Yes.
Councilmember Lee?
Yes.
Mayor Bonilla?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
5-0. Thank you very much. So now we're going to move on to item 19 tonight, the Downtown Business Improvement Area Annual Renewal. We're going to have Jennifer Chen, our Economic Development Director, here to present. And I think we have Mr. Lou Cohen, who's also going to be speaking at some point.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. I just want to, the item before you is the annual renewal for the DSMA's annual assessment. The Louis Cohen, President of DSMA Board, and the owner of B Street Bookstore will be presenting the accomplishments and challenges for the year.
Mayor Bonilla, council members, and city staff, I'm really glad to be here in person. So the DSMA is charging forward through this mess. During 2020, when I was sitting in my store waiting for the hordes to come smash windows and we refused to board up, I was wondering, if we were going to get through this. And honestly, I'm amazed at how well downtown has fared. And much of that is due to the city of San Mateo's efforts and, city staff and council making a concerted effort to help the businesses downtown. So thank you for that. So we have continued to have regular board meetings monthly. I've had excellent attendance by board members and continued to work with Public Works on downtown cleaning and sending out messaging to get the word out about COVID or whatever through our newsletters. Lots of effort has gone into creating a new website for the DSMA to help people find, our downtown businesses. We made an effort to make it mobile friendly so that it's easier to use. Everybody's on their smartphone these days, and we have to be cognizant of that. And for this next year coming up, we're going to continue to do advertising, collaborate with the city. We are proposing a new fee structure that I know you have all heard about in the past, and instead of going forward with that, because of COVID, we in fact halved our fees. So part of what we're here tonight to do is to go back to our normal fee structure pre-COVID, and then in the next months, we're going to be asking you to look at a more equitable fee structure for the downtown businesses. So just anecdotally, today I had a couple in the store from San Francisco that came down to escape their city because they can't stand it. It's dirty and smelly and dangerous, and they come to San Mateo because it's a nice place to be. And again, a lot of that has to do with our efforts here to make it so. And I appreciate all your help. So one of the things that we're going to try to do in looking ahead is possibly re-engaging with an executive director for the DSMA. We've been running on an all-volunteer army. If you look at, well, I'm getting ahead of this, but if you look at our budget, we have very, very low administrative costs, and that's because we do it all in-house. We have some great help from city staff, but it's an all-volunteer army, and it's not sustainable. So go ahead to the next one, Jennifer. So the things that, we're working on are, ideas for downtown to revitalize some of these things, the outdoor dining, and the city has been working really hard to work with the restaurants. We're really known as a foodie place. People come to downtown to eat because that's what we're known for. And I think we really need to extend a hand to these restaurants, as we have been, to make it easy for them to continue with outdoor dining and make it a safe and visually pleasant place to be. So I guess that's really about it. I just wanted to say, as far as the budget goes, if you notice, we're operating at a little bit of a deficit projected for next year, and that's because we have reserves. We've been really careful with our money, and we're staying the course. We're going to be okay, and just living within our means, so to speak. So I did want to say I have Seamus Whitley here, our board member and treasurer, who's been an integral part of making the DSMA function. And I believe Robert Anderson is in attendance on Zoom too tonight, who you all know. And really, that's about it. So any questions about anything we're up to, or?
Go ahead, Councilman Rodriguez.
Thank you. Well, first off, I think that you and your team need to be commended for just persevering as well as you have throughout these last several years, because I was with you. I was wondering what was going to happen, and through your leadership, I think that I wouldn't say everybody's emerged unscathed, but survived, and I'm really encouraged that you're kind of picking up where you left off before and looking into hiring an executive director. And I think it's been pretty impressive how even before the pandemic, how you've been basically managing everything on a very shoestring budget, and just everybody volunteering. So that being said, even with an executive director, I know that DSMA has had some challenges in the past, and I'm wondering what you're doing kind of to plan for correcting for some of those things before, so that they don't reemerge, and you kind of get the course corrected when you're finally able to afford it, or hire and afford and start working with the director.
You just have to have people that care, Eric. It's just that simple. And, oversight and systems in place to make sure that bad stuff doesn't happen. Like now we have, a system where to make payments to any of our vendors, we have 2 signatures required, and the accountant that we have even calls me on the phone and says, "Hey, Lou, what's this check for?" And we really we have a really great system in place that I think is going to head off most of those problems. I think you're referring mostly to the last the executive director before, Ann Feineman, with the?
Well, even with Anne, who is very talented and very caring, there were still some challenges.
Sure.
And I just want to make sure that, I think that all the caring in the world is going to be still difficult to overcome some of those challenges. And I just want to make sure that you're taking the steps to take a deep look at what worked and what didn't work. And you're moving forward with a new plan that's hopefully gets better results.
Sure, we are, and I hope we continue on that path. So
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks. That was the only question I had.
Any other questions? None. Okay, well then, thank you. I think we'll go to public comment.
I do have one speaker in the room, Seamus Whitley, please.
Hello. Thanks for giving me your time tonight. I'm addressing you as a member of the DSMA and also as I guess, part of the maligned unicorn of the office worker. I do work here downtown. I do live in Pacifica, the county of San Mateo, but not here in San Mateo. But I do want to express that the business I work with, it's very important that where we're working, downtown San Mateo, it functions well, it's safe, it's clean, and the food is terrific, obviously, so going out at lunch is great. But it's important to our business that we provide that for our office workers and for our visitors that come. So it is, San Mateo is a great showcase, in our opinion, and we've been happy to be here for the last 6 or 7 years. If I can, I'd just like to address Mr. Rodriguez's point. We worked through our first audit a couple years ago, and it came through pretty well. Not much at all, really, of the comments. So I feel like we have carried forward with trying to improve, and also with the fact that since we have such an active board, the oversight's going to be a lot easier. We'll have a lot more knowledge of what our executive director is, and the board will be able to guide that executive director in a much better fashion. So I feel I just want to address that comment. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Any hands raised in the Zoom call? I have no hands raised. Mr. Mayor, we're done with public comment.
Great. Thank you very much. Then I bring it back to the council, close the public comment, bring it back to the council. I think that I'd like to say that I have seen downtown improve, actually, during the time of COVID, that when the cleanup crew was hired, that when the garbage issue of garbage cans being left out all day long on the sidewalks downtown was efficiently dealt with. These things happened actually during a time when after COVID started. And I believe downtown actually got better. It got cleaner. It got safer. It became a nicer place to be. And I think this is because of the hard work that the DSMA has done with its volunteer crew, which would be an argument for keeping the volunteer crew, but I know we're not going to do that. We're here tonight. We're being asked to approve the full assessment so that the DSMA can indeed hire a new executive director. And I'm in favor of that. I think that the volunteer crew has muscled through a lot. They've worked hard. They've done a great job. And I want to say that I support moving forward with a fully functional, maybe a paid crew to do the work and to maintain and to do better than what we've had. And I also want to mention, I remember that I was at a meeting probably a year ago where there was an issue that was brought up. And since then, things have changed. We now have downtown this dynamic where we have the blocks of B closed between 1st and 3rd. And what I remember was that I heard a presentation about a public restroom that could be someplace out in the public space where people who don't know a shop owner and who maybe don't have a friend that owns a coffee shop, and if they need to go to the bathroom, they have a place to go. And I think this is an amenity whose time has come. Because if we're going to have increased pedestrian use downtown on our streets, and we have the locations, not only have we had the public square space in front of the theater, but now we have the street spaces where we can indeed put this amenity. I know that the utilities that are required for it are located very nearby, in fact, right under the street for a good part of it, most important part of it. And I want to ask that the City Council also consider finding out what we can do, okay, to help encourage that, making that happen. So those are my thoughts. I don't really have any questions. Those are my thoughts. And I do support the full assessment. Thank you. Go ahead.
Well, I agree that we do need a bathroom, which is why we included it in our council strategic plan. And that was a great idea that came from Mr. Lou Cohen. So no one I know in my life deserves a vacation more than the owner of B Street Books. And I think that I think of this assessment as really a sustainability plan for the DSMA and the organization as a whole. And I consider the DSMA and the City of San Mateo, this partnership, to be, one of the least known success stories in San Mateo. But I think we all see and experience it every day when we go downtown. We just don't know who to credit. So it's these small opportunities where we get to sing the praises of Lou and Jennifer and Seamus and all the folks on the board. It's we would not have weathered the storm of the pandemic without you, and you took more hits, and your workload got that much heavier during the pandemic. So it's really quite remarkable what you all have accomplished with so little, and I think that this is absolutely the right direction and a needed direction in terms of giving the DSMA the bones that you need to kind of build back up and make sure that there's organizational stability long into the future. Because the Lou Cohens, they don't make them like that anymore. So we can't count on you coming around twice in San Mateo's future. So I'm very, very happy to support this assessment and so grateful for all of your contributions.
Thank you very much, Councilwoman Lee. I want to go further because I know that there was also a request that the DSMA was considering going back and doing some analysis about the structure of the districts, the assessment districts. And I know that because I see new developments coming up in what is currently I think the District 2, where the assessments are roughly half, I think, of what they are in District 1. The shape of businesses and where they're located in downtown is changing. So I want to say that I look forward to seeing the district do its analysis, the DSMA do its analysis, and come back with an approach regarding changing the districts and the assessment levels for those districts. Thank you, Lou.
Can I make
Sure, go ahead.
comment? I just want to be sure that we're clear. So tonight you guys are approving us to go back to our pre-COVID assessment, and any change to our fee structure is something that's going to happen in the future.
Right.
So in terms of us having the ability to hire or rehire a executive director at this point is not possible, even at our old fee structure. That's why we lost Dan Feineman, that we just didn't have the money to continue. So I want to make sure that's clear. We need more money. We need to realign our fee structure so that we have more money coming in the door so we can afford to have an executive director.
Thank you for making that clear, Lou. Thank you.
I'll make a motion that we adopt the resolution for the fees.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Motion and second. Madam Clerk, could we have the roll call vote?
Deputy Mayor Pappen?
Yes.
Councilmember Goethals?
Yes.
Councilmember Rodriguez?
Yes.
Councilmember Lee?
Yes.
Mayor Bonilla?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we will now thank you, Lou and Seamus. Jennifer, thank you. Now we move on to item 20, the fiscal year 2022-23 operating and capital budget and GAN appropriation limit adoption, and the title goes on, but I think we're going to see it on the slide. Finance Director Rich Lee is here to guide us through the process.
Good evening, Mayor Bonilla, members of the council, Rich Lee, the city's finance director. The item before you this evening is the proposed 22-23 operating budget and the 22-27 CIP. Just a really quick background. This was first presented to the council as a preview in April of 2022, and then 2 weeks ago, we had the first hearing. Tonight is the second hearing, followed by adoption. The total budget is $284.8 million. Over 3/4 of that is the operating budget, and then the remainder the CIP. The citywide sources of funding, when the sewer fund and the general fund combined, that's almost 85% of the city's funding sources. So the focus of this is primarily on the general fund. Looking at CIP and the light blue band, that represents the sanitary sewer, namely the investment in the Clean Water Program. Then on the operating budget side, 70% of that is the general fund. And looking at the general fund, we're looking at a net loss of $4.7 million when we look at total revenues less total expenditures. When we look at our revenues, over 80% comes from tax revenues. And primarily, most of that comes from property tax, which we're looking at just over $80 million for next fiscal year. The majority of that is for the current secured property taxes. Looking at sales tax, our number 2 revenue source for the general fund. Next year, we're looking at $22.4 million, and that does represent a recovery, faster recovery than what we thought from the pandemic-related recession. Again, real property transfer tax for the current fiscal year, which this graph shows a 20-year history, we are projecting $16 million for the current fiscal year. However, in the major economic cycles, we're using the average of the current economic cycle of COVID-19, and the recovery and growth period. For TOT, as you can see, again, 20 years of history, and we are expecting that over the next 10 years, we will recover back to that 2019 baseline. Looking at the expenditure side, $164.2 million. This is fairly representative of our past budgets, namely with our public safety taking up over 50% of our general fund budget. So just one thing to point out with the general fund is that while we are anticipating $4.7 million loss, council back in April adopted a resolution to commit $10 million of unassigned fund balance, specifically to address the investment in CIP, as well as the cost of negotiated labor increases. And finally, with the position budget, we discussed this 2 weeks ago. There are primarily the change in public works, which represents the needed staff to fund the new wastewater treatment plant. So the resolution or the recommendation this evening is to adopt resolutions to approve the fiscal year 22-23 operating and capital budgets, the 22-23 position budget, the fiscal year 22-23 GAN appropriations limit, and the fiscal year's 22-27 capital improvement program. Before I wrap up the presentation, I want to acknowledge the Athenian efforts of my small but mighty budget team, Renee Halcon, our budget analyst, and my Deputy Director of Finance, Karen Huang, who made this possible and bring this before the council this evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director Lee. So, council, do we have questions? Seeing no questions, we'll go to public comment.
If you wish to make a comment on the budget item, please raise your hand. There's no in-house comments. Oh, and we do have one comment. Ryan Motoshimi, please go ahead.
Just wanted to say thank you to the council for this budget. I think it's a strong budget that does fund priorities that will help move forward bicycle pedestrian infrastructure in the city amongst many, many other priorities. So I certainly support its passage. Thank you very much.
Thank you. There are no other hands raised.
Seeing no further public comment, then I will close the public comment period, bring it back to the council for any discussion. Councilmember Goethals. Councilmember Rodriguez. Lee. Deputy Mayor. Okay. So it looks like we have no comments, except I want to say that I have to agree with the caller, Ryan Motorshamy. It is a great budget. I know that we have our difficulties, but I believe that with the firm and steady hand of our finance director leading us and our city manager, who is definitely at the helm here, we have made some smart moves. And we're heading in the right direction. Despite some difficulties and despite revenues being down in certain areas, some revenues are coming back, like sales tax, faster than we expected. Even TOT coming back slowly, but still faster than we had expected. And in our search for other revenues, which I think we'll be discussing later, I think that we're on a good footing, and I want to thank you very much for that. So with that said, I want to see, do we have a member who would like to recommend the staff recommendation for approval?
So moved.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Madam Clerk, the roll call, please.
Councilmember Goethals?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Pappen?
Yes.
Councilmember Rodriguez?
Yes.
Councilmember Lee?
Yes.
Mayor Bonilla?
Yes, thank you.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you, Rich. Okay, next item 21 is under new business, ballot measure to increase existing real property transfer tax rate for properties sold for $10 million or more. And we have Samantha Wiggle here to present.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor Bonilla and members of the City Council. My name is Samantha Weigel. I'm the city's communications manager. So yes, tonight we'll be discussing the next step in Council's direction to consider a ballot measure to increase the city's existing real property transfer tax for properties sold for $10 million or more. And of course, Finance Director Rich Lee and City Attorney Prasanna Rasai are also available tonight for any questions. So for a little bit of background, Council has been discussing the city's finances and potential revenue enhancement options for several years now. Earlier tonight, just now, you adopted the fiscal year budget, and Rich Lee gave a comprehensive update about the city's financial position during the June 6th meeting. Therefore, I'm going to keep this section pretty brief, but do want to point out a few things about the city's finances. So yes, in response to the economic impacts of the pandemic, the city implemented a fiscal sustainability plan, which did reduce expenditures, and we received one-time federal stimulus funds from the American Rescue Plan Act. And while significant steps have been taken, a $4.7 million deficit is expected for this coming year, as well as a need to draw down on reserves over the next 5 years. And we do anticipate our budget will be able to cover core services at existing levels. However, there are a number of long-term council priorities and capital improvement projects for which we do not have identified funding. This includes almost $90 million for the Recreation Facilities Strategic Plan, funding for road maintenance to sufficiently support the paving program and prevent future failed streets, upgrades to our libraries, and a number of other major projects. So in total, there is about $300 million in unfunded improvements that have been identified. Council has been considering a wide variety of different revenue enhancement options, and earlier this year did direct staff to proceed with surveying on 2 of those options, and that was a potential sales tax increase or changes to the city's existing real property transfer tax. So we evaluated an option to create a tiered RPTT structure, and that initially looked at setting the lowest tier at either $2.5 million or $3 million. However, during the May 16th council meeting, a number of council members expressed some concerns about a sales tax and instead directed staff to proceed with an RPTT measure that would affect fewer properties by setting the lowest tier at $10 million. And as a reminder, this would be a general tax measure, which would support the general fund, would require a majority of voter approval, and must be presented during a regularly scheduled election. The city's existing real property transfer tax has been in effect and unchanged since the 1970s. It's important to note that it is only paid when a property is sold or transferred, so this is not an annual tax. And it's currently a flat rate of 0.5% regardless of the sales price. I know Rich Lee has presented some of these scenarios in the past, but similar to San Mateo, a number of other cities have also shifted to a tiered RPTT structure in recent years. And these are just a couple examples from Bay Area jurisdictions. And that being said, in general, voters may be less familiar with an RPTT measure, as isn't something that the average person pays regularly like they do with the sales tax. So this is the proposed two-tiered structure that council directed staff to develop for San Mateo. There would be no change to the existing 0.5% rate for any property that is sold for less than $10 million. And then for properties that sell for $10 million or more, there would be a 1% increase. It would be from 0.5% to 1.5%. And this information is based on 2021 sales data. After evaluating this, we figured that about 0.5% of all properties sold that year sold for over $10 million, meaning the vast majority of property sales would not have seen an increase. And while RPTT is definitely known to be somewhat volatile as it depends on properties sold in any given year based on that 2021 data, it's expected that a change to this tiered structure could generate approximately $4.8 million annually. So in the survey issued by True North Research earlier this year, participants were asked what kind of services and projects they would support funding if the measure passes. And as you can see, the community clearly prioritizes improvements to our parks and recreation facilities, our streets and infrastructure, having quick responses to 911 emergencies, and a number of other services that our general fund does support. This is the proposed 75-word ballot language, which is included in the resolution and staff report that you have. And finally, if council does wish to proceed with the measure as drafted, the next step would be to introduce an ordinance and adopt a resolution to place the measure on the ballot. And staff is requesting that at least 4 council members vote in favor to move this forward. Staff is also requesting an $80,000 budget appropriation for costs associated with the measure. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions and public comment.
Thank you very much, Samantha. Questions? Yes, Councilmember Goethals.
Should we be looking further back than just 2021 as far as the data for how much revenue this will generate?
I would say yes. We were actually able to pull data from just the past couple years today. I will say, and Rich can probably speak more articulately to this, but the way that the county provides this data, which we do require them to provide, it is not as complete as we would have liked. But Rich, I'll let you speak to that further if you...
Yes, I do have the data with me. We're looking at the data more from a what percentage of the total transactions would be subject to this potentially new tier. And on average, it was just under 1% since 2018-19 until present. Until present, I mean through transactions from April of 2022. But if you're asking for, on average, how much revenue it would generate per fiscal year, I'll need about 3 minutes to do that. I didn't quite get that ready.
I think another thing to note, as Rich has shown in that graph in his budget presentation, it is extremely volatile, so it really depends on the number of sales in any given year, which, as we know, through recessions and pandemics and areas of boom and bust, that can definitely fluctuate.
One of the things we discussed last time was the number of tax measures, including the tax measure for the one shoreline that are going to hit the ballot this year, but also the fact that the economic conditions hit right around the time of this survey, where gas prices are going up and the interest rates were going up, and a lot of things were hitting right around the time of the survey, weren't they?
I don't want to speak completely out of turn, but I believe the survey was issued around late April and May, and there were a variety of factors that were at play, definitely statewide, globally, nationally. Has the condition changed that much since we issued the survey? I know in talking with True North President Dr. Tim McClarney, he has noted that even though there are issues that come up in people's minds long term, people's opinions on this kind of stuff don't tend to change that dramatically. And we are looking at just a couple months, before the election.
Any other questions?
I just think it's worth kind of reiterating the point that it was in the presentation about the year that the real property transfer tax was set. Do you remember what year that was?
It was established, I think, in 1977.
Yes.
So it has been in effect for some time.
Yes, so that's like 44 years, right? So it hasn't been increased in almost half a century. And then I thought it was also interesting, the point about looking at some of the comparable cities that have multiple tiers, that among those, if you don't mind returning to that slide, it looks like those thresholds for $10 million that were set significantly higher than what we are even considering, I believe at like 2.75%, 3%, 1.83%. So that's so that's just to say that like across some of like the other charter cities that have this mechanism, would you say it's fair to say that this tax threshold is very comparatively low?
I'd say with the cities that do have a tiered structure, it's comparable. We also know that there are a number of other jurisdictions that might be looking at putting on a similar measure, including here in San Mateo County. I know it's been covered in the news that San Bruno is exploring that potential option. So while they might not be as common here in San Mateo County, we are seeing more cities that do have existing RPTTs to start moving toward that tier structure.
Mm-hmm. And their $10 million tax rate is higher than what we're even proposing with the increase.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite understand that question.
So for example, the Richmond rate for $10 million and above is 3%, whereas we're looking at increasing it to 1.5%.
Yes, for the other cities that do have the RPTT tiered structure, their rates for 10 million and over do tend to be either higher or comparable for what we're proposing.
And those passed relatively recently, within the last 5 years or 7 years. Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Through the mayor, I do have a response to Councilmember Gothel's
Yes,
question.
please.
So if we take the average impact, if this proposed change to RPTT were in effect going back to 2018-19 until current, the average annual impact to RPTT revenues would be about $6.8 million.
And averaging is not exactly the way that property sales work. A volatile index. Yeah. Volatile source of funding. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? Do we have comment? Oh, then we need public comment.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. First speaker is Lisa Diaz-Nash.
Good evening, Council, Mayor Bonilla, and City staff. My name is Lisa Diaz-Nash. I'm on the Mayor of the Measure S Oversight Committee, but I'm speaking in my private capacity right now. I urge the Council to hold off on putting the proposed increase in San Mateo's property transfer tax on this November's ballot. Given the inflation and economic uncertainty that we just spoke about in our daily headlines, now is not the time to increase taxes on anyone. It's true that this tax will not directly impact residential property sales and that the number of properties impacted is relatively small. But historically, increases in property transfer taxes have hurt small businesses who rent space in mid-size or mixed-use buildings. Owners of these buildings often are not the large ones, but they don't have the capacity, or they tend to pass on these increased taxes in the form of increased rents. And given the tenuous position of many small businesses in San Mateo, we should think about doing all we can to help these small businesses rebound. Increasing the property transfer tax would increase the expenses of small businesses at exactly the wrong time. I recommend that the city wait to further understand economic trends and focus on stabilizing our local economy before undertaking new taxes for unfunded improvements, much as we all may want them. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We have one Zoom commentator. Rayan Monteshemi, please go ahead and unmute.
Good evening, City Council, Honorable Mayor. I was at the previous hearing where this was discussed, and I appreciate the simplification of the language, as well as the front-loading of the benefits that would be provided by the measure in the actual ballot language. To my understanding, the language is as following: to fund essential local general services in the city of San Mateo, such as street repairs, parks, recreation, fire protection, emergency response and crime prevention, and improving intersections, sidewalks, and bike lanes for safety and reduced traffic congestion, shall the measure increasing the city of San Mateo's existing transfer tax on property sales of 10 million or more from 0.5% to 1.5%, generating approximately 4.8 million annually until ended by voters with independent audits and all money locally controlled, be adopted. I think that the sequence of the wording is very smart in that it starts with the benefits. It then goes to describe that the real property transfer tax would only apply to $10 million or more properties, which thus kind of helps folks read as soon as possible what the benefits are and then what the application of it would be, and that it likely would not apply to them. I do understand Ms. Nash's concerns, and would counter to say that our inability to fund these long-time unfunded needs is hurting our city, our small businesses, and other folks. So I also want to throw in that perspective of the need for those kinds of improvements. I do always certainly understand those concerns as well, of course. So I do think that generating revenues for the city is important. And it's important for us to have revenues to make investments, even in times of inflation. Thank you.
Thank you. There are no other hands raised or speakers.
Thank you very much. In that case, we're going to close public comment, bring it back to the council. Any further comments? Councilmember Rodriguez.
Yeah, so I just want to say, when we first started this discussion in May, there were several council members that were interested, or at least said they were interested in the sales tax and a lot lower threshold with this transfer tax. And I kind of view this version, though I don't think it's perfect by any means, especially in this time, as more of a compromise. Because now is not the right time to raise taxes, but we do have some significant unfunded needs that I think our residents will benefit from. So here is a situation where we can raise funds for our rec centers, our parks, our streets, and all that stuff, where we're not going to inflict these costs on San Mateo residents, or at least everyday San Mateo residents, that's for sure. And lastly, I just want to say, we are not implementing this tax. We would be putting it on the ballot, letting San Mateans decide if they want this tax or not. If you're somebody that wrote into us and didn't like the tax, then don't vote for it. And if you want the tax, then vote for it. So I kind of see this as a compromise that it's going to throw it to the voters and let San Mateans decide. So I will be supporting putting this on the ballot.
Councilmember Goethals.
I'll go next. I'm really torn for a couple of reasons. On the one hand, I think that the economic conditions right now are really tough, and a lot of people would see a new tax as being something that they would not support, and yet Councilmember Rodriguez is right that it would impact such a small number of San Mateo residents that is weighing heavily on me. I also see the things that we know this would fund, and those things are things that dramatically improve the quality of life for the people who live here. We're talking about parks, we're talking about streets, we're talking about safety and improvements that people care about, rely on, the kinds of things that people talk about day in and day out as being what is special about San Mateo, things that are important about the quality of life here. And as much as I have reservations about a tax right now, the way that this has been carved out, the way that it will impact the fewest number of people and benefit the most, I am persuaded that we should let the San Mateo voters vote on this.
Go ahead. Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, so I appreciate letting the voters decide on the one hand, and the need for us to have to support projects that we see coming as a city. It's something that's kind of come to my mind since May is this idea. I had originally thought, well, if we do a $10 million threshold, then we're really just hitting big projects. But you kind of have to take it one step further. And one step further is oftentimes big projects don't mean big users. And so for me, when I started thinking about that, I started getting very concerned. And with many mixed-use projects that are out there, we don't always have big users. We oftentimes have small users, perhaps in big projects that are divided up. So I actually have reservations now about going forward with something, a change in the real property transfer tax at this moment, because I feel like if it adds on to the cost of the sale, which it inevitably will, that has to trickle down to somebody. And I think it can trickle down to small users, especially like when I think about our general plan and how many different areas in our different sites in our study areas where we talked about mixed use. There's a lot of those coming down the pike. And so for me, I'm not inclined to support this measure going to the ballot. I just don't, I see it as hitting small folks at what might not be a good time. So that's kind of where I'm coming from on it.
I see it very differently. I think that if we continue on our path right now, that we are committing to a lower level of service for all of our community members. If we don't make changes right now to improve and maximize our revenue opportunities, then $300 million of unfunded capital improvement projects will never come to fruition, and our community members pay that price. We have an opportunity right now to let the voters decide on what kind of investments they want to make in our community. And I think that it would be a very serious and unfortunate misstep to deprive them of that chance. Right now, on our current path, we are only able to barely cover our core services, just our core services. And that means that we're drawing down on our reserves. That means that we're continuing to ask our own employees to make concessions during the hard times. And we are unable to recoup those losses. So we've asked our employees to make significant sacrifices, and now we have a chance to tax less than 1%. Less than 1% for a tax that hasn't seen an increase in almost half a century. That, by comparison to every other city that levies this tax, is significantly less. So I think that this is incredibly urgent and well justified. I wholeheartedly support the voters deciding, and I hope that the council will be able to count to 4.
Thank you very much. I concur a lot with some of the statements I've heard tonight. I have to say that what the council would be doing if it were to approve this would be attempting to do what we're expected to do, what we're supposed to do, which is provide funding which will provide for performance of services, for parks, for roads, for all of the important capital improvements and the programs that all the people have come to expect in San Mateo. If we are not able to raise funds, we might not be able to do, I don't know, maybe it's the ice skating rink, which I don't think we pay for, but maybe it's all that fun in the park during the holidays. Something at some point, you know, we turn a certain point where we don't have funding to maintain service levels, to maintain employee levels, and then we start slipping down that slippery slope. And the fact is, this measure, if voters read it carefully and think about it, it represents the council attempting to do what we're supposed to do for the people. And it affects such a small percentage of people. And I believe the portion that this tax would bring to the city from those particular transactions, considering that the values of those properties have increased so rapidly. In fact, I think it's just completely almost unbelievable, the current value of so many of those properties now, that this portion that may be taken in tax at this point is I think only fair. Okay, it's fair that the city needs it to do what it needs to do, and we have to get it somewhere. Other cities charge a lot more. Other cities charge more at the $2 million rate, twice. In fact, I saw 3 times more than what we charge on the charts that you showed. So I think we're a very reasonable city in general. More than 99% of the people are getting a great deal. And we're asking that the larger property owners, should they be taxed to pay for more, money that a lot of other people don't have in this economy. A lot of other people are struggling, and we need to struggle as a city. We need to get over this and find a way, and that's our struggle, to find a way to provide what we have promised to the residents of San Mateo. So for those reasons, I support this measure. And so with that said, I think we're looking for a motion on this. Council action right here. If somebody want to make a motion to accept the, or to the staff recommendation, to move the staff recommendation?
I'd like to make a motion to introduce an ordinance to amend the provisions of Chapter 3.48, Real Property Document Transfer Tax of the San Mateo Municipal Code to increase the city's existing real property transfer tax from 0.5% to 1.5% for property sold or transferred for $10 million or more, and adopt a resolution to call the election and place the measure on the November 8th ballot.
Do we have a second? I second.
Councilmember Lee.
Yes.
Mayor Bonilla.
Yes.
Councilmember Rodriguez.
Yes.
Councilmember Gothels.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Pappen.
No.
Motion carries 4-1.
Thank you very much. Now we're off to the next item, which is item 22, minimum wage informational update. Here we go. Denise Garcia to present. And Jennifer Chen helping.
Thanks, Aaron. Good evening, Mayor Bonilla and City Council members. My name is Denise Garcia, Management Analyst in the City Manager's Office, and I'm here to provide a brief informational update on the city's minimum wage ordinance and to share a few policy options for consideration. I have Jennifer Chen here with me as well, the Economic Development Manager, who's available to answer any of your questions. Let's begin with the minimum wage background. In August 2016, City Council adopted an ordinance to incrementally increase the wage to $15 per hour by 2019. Since 2020, the city adjusts the minimum wage based on the Consumer Price Index, also known as the CPI, which is used to measure the changes in price for goods and services within a particular region. The city uses the San Francisco, Oakland, Hayward metropolitan area, which is comprised of Alameda, Contra Costa, Marin, San Francisco, and San Mateo counties. San Mateo was the first city in the county to adopt a higher minimum wage, following trends of cities in Santa Clara County. 9 other cities followed and now have their own local minimum wage. San Mateo, Belmont, and Redwood City wages are equally the same and are the highest in the county at $16.20. In Santa Clara County, Mountain View and Sunnyvale have the highest minimum wages, both at $17.20. Other cities in Santa Clara County have slightly higher minimum wages than San Mateo because they reached $15 per hour earlier and have since been adjusting the minimum wage based on CPI. Attached to the agenda report is a comparison table of cities with their minimum wages and other minimum wage related policies. Also in your agenda packet, staff described administrating costs, enforcement costs, staffing costs, and enforcement history in the agenda report. The remainder of the presentation will focus on key policy changes related to CPI and wage rounding that the council may want to consider implementing. The first policy consideration is a CPI cap. The current policy in the ordinance does not include a CPI cap. The predicted CPI for next year will be somewhere between 7 to 8%, increasing our minimum wage by up to an additional $1.30 per hour. By looking at the table, we can see that the past few years, CPI percentages have remained within a similar range, but the next CPI percentage will result in a significant difference. The table lists the minimum wage for each year and the associated CPI percentage to show the increases over the next years. Staff researched local minimum wage ordinances throughout San Mateo and Santa Clara County to compare policies related to CPI adjustments. All cities researched use the annual CPI to adjust minimum wage for future years, but 3 of 10 cities in San Mateo County have a CPI cap at 3.5%. 5 of 7 cities in Santa Clara County have a CPI cap at 5%, and the state of California has a CPI cap at 3.5%. Staff believes there are positive outcomes to having a cap on CPI and also not having a cap. For example, having a CPI cap may prevent sizable increases to occur year after year. Varying increases may also negatively impact small businesses, so setting a cap can help lessen the impact that smaller businesses may not be able to weather. Another benefit is it will prevent a financial impact on the city's own staffing costs, which primarily relate to the part-time seasonal workers in the Parks and Recreation Department. If a CPI cap is selected, City Council may want to consider a catch-up provision to allow wages to eventually realign with inflation. It is important to note that no other city researched in San Mateo County or Santa Clara County have a catch-up provision in their ordinances. There are also benefits to not having a CPI cap. For example, if there is no cap, minimum wage workers will have wages that keep up with the cost of goods and services. That will then hopefully lessen the income disparity gap. One other thing to consider is based on some anecdotes, the minimum wages of other businesses seem to market wages at about $18 per hour, which is higher than what we expect the new minimum wage to be even without a cap. The next policy option for consideration is whether to allow minimum wage to be adjusted downward if there is a negative CPI. The city's local minimum wage currently does not allow for this, and none of the other cities staff researched allowed for it either. As a result, staff does not recommend consideration of this policy option. The final policy option for consideration is on wage roundup. The question is whether to round up the minimum wage or continue to charge to the nearest penny. The table on the right lists all the cities, including the state, that round up their minimum wage. 3 of the 10 cities in San Mateo County and all the cities in Santa Clara County round up their minimum wage to the nearest nickel, while the state of California rounds up their minimum wage to the nearest dime. Since most cities in San Mateo and Santa Clara County, as well as the state, round up their minimum wage, the City Council may want to consider rounding up to the nearest nickel or maybe even dime. One consideration is that 2 other cities, Redwood City and Belmont, have pegged their wages to be the same as San Mateo's, so if this change was made, they may also need to adjust their ordinances or will have a different wage structure going forward. I'd like to conclude my presentation with a list of questions for City Council. Staff is seeking guidance on the following. Should the city set a cap on the CPI? If so, at what percentage? Should a catch-up provision be included in the ordinance? Should the city decrease minimum wage if there is a negative CPI? And lastly, should the city round the wage up to the nearest nickel or perhaps dime? If any changes to the minimum wage policy are recommended by council, staff will return with an ordinance amendment this summer to ensure that the changes go into place before the 2023 annual wage increase. Thank you. And I'm happy to take any questions. And so is Jennifer.
Thank you very much. Questions? Okay, I don't see any questions. Let's go to public comment.
I have one hand raised, Cheryl Angeles.
Okay.
Good evening.
Good evening.
How are you? Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, Mayor Bonilla and council members. My name is Cheryl Angeles, and I am the president and CEO of the San Mateo Area Chamber of Commerce. I applaud the city of San Mateo and its leadership in being the first city in San Mateo County to adopt a local minimum wage ordinance. The consideration of adjustments to the city's minimum wage is not a straightforward issue, particularly when that adjustment is tied to the Consumer Price Index, CPI, and the anticipated increase in the CPI is estimated to be between 7% and 8% next year. In fact, in an informal poll of some of our board members, we've heard differing points of view. On the one hand, our board members representing nonprofit organizations are in favor of adjustments to the minimum wage tied to the CPI because of the extreme economic hardship they see for the individuals and families they serve, which was true even before the pandemic. On the other hand, some of our board members representing small businesses, which is most of our membership, that a minimum wage adjustment between 7% and 8% would put further strain on businesses that are already operating on the margin. As a Chamber of Commerce, we support businesses and our community. This is an issue that clearly impacts both. We are also an organization that is committed to making informed decisions based on data. As such, and if there is time, we would be happy to survey our members to determine preferences related to minimum wage adjustments, cap versus no cap, and share that information with the city. Thank you for your consideration of this important issue, and the Chamber looks forward to being of help in determining the best path forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl. There are no other hands raised.
Okay, then we're going to close the public comment and bring it back to the council. Councilmember Lee.
Well, my mom used to run a small shop selling used clothes, and so when I think about the impacts to our small businesses and the minimum wage and trying to strike a balance between helping our our employee base make a livable wage, and then also wanting to make sure that our businesses can stay here and operate. I think that with the volatility of inflation, I would be in favor of setting a cap. I think that setting the cap at the state level is advantageous in that it provides some sort of a ceiling for budgeting, for long-term budgeting, and a cushion to the small employers that need to keep pace year over year. So I would be in favor of doing a catch-up provision. I don't.
Do you have a percentage you prefer for that?
Well, the state one is 3.5, right?
Oh, 3.5. Okay.
I don't believe the city should decrease minimum wage if there is a negative CPI. I think that would be moving backwards and hurt our employees. And for simplicity, I think in accounting, I do think it makes sense to round the wages up to the nearest nickel or dime. I'm not a CPA, but I imagine that does make a difference for those of us who have to be mired in the accounting and inner workings of those businesses. So that's where I'm at with these.
So let me ask, catch-up provision, which follows the first item?
Yes.
Yes to the catch-up position? Okay. Okay, who's next?
I have some questions.
Yes.
Did we pull small businesses at all. I heard from Cheryl Angeles, they said that they could. It sounds like they didn't do any formal polling. Did we do any?
We need, yeah, there you go. No, not hear you.
We did not do any formal polling. I did reach out to a few of the businesses in downtown, on smaller ones, as well as anecdotally, when you look at wages across the board for fast service restaurants, they are basically their signs are asking for $18 per hour because they cannot hire for less than that. Often, but that's anecdotal. I think the chamber's offer was that they felt like they could if we wish, but I don't know that's going to be effective enough time for us to implement it for this coming January.
So it's your opinion, just I guess unscientifically, because you work with all these businesses, that this wouldn't affect the majority of the businesses.
What they're doing is the wage level. They are hiring at minimum wage or above, generally above. What they're doing is decreasing operating hours in order to make up for the difference. So many of them are decreasing hours between 2 and 4, and then closing earlier.
Okay. So I'll go ahead with my comments.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I actually agree with Councilmember Lee's kind of point of view on this, in that right now, so I see two conditions or two possibilities. So one, you have businesses that this is not going to affect because they're paying more. So they shouldn't care what we do. But the ones that would care what we do, and are the ones that are probably closest to the brink in this environment, are the ones that this could put them out of business. And it's having this type of volatility. I mean, who would have thought 2 years ago that we would be talking about 7% inflation? So I guess that's a long way of getting at. I think that if we do care about small businesses, I mean, I know we care about workers too, but these small businesses have been paying fair wages for a long time, and now we're looking at just an inconceivable increase. I think it makes sense to have some cap with a catch-up provision. And then I do think that if we're going to do that, I think it's fair to round up, and I think it's also fair to say that we would never go negative, which I don't think would ever happen anyway, but I think that would be, so I guess ditto what Councilmember Lee said.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question. When do you determine to implement a catch-up?
Well, we haven't looked at other cities that have a catch-up provision, so it's hard to say. So I think we'll have to get back to you on that one and think about when. It looks like just city manager has a thought.
Through the mayor, I think if we were to put a cap on, if the council were to put a cap on, I think it would just be a matter of keeping an index of, and so if inflation if council puts a 5% cap on, and inflation is 8% this year and it's 2% next year, it'd be 5% and 5%. But it'd be something that we just would need to keep up with over the years. But I don't anticipate that would be difficult to do. But we would, maintain it over the years to ensure that if inflation eventually caught up, that we would get back to where we were, if that makes sense.
Yeah, what you're telling me is market conditions will control when we do a catch-up.
Exactly.
Okay.
But I guess what I'm saying is if we had, this could range over multiple years. If we had a 5% cap and we had 8% inflation for 3 years, we would when inflation came back down, we would be capping out at 5% every year to catch up over that for that 3-year period of very high inflation, is how we would execute that implementation.
I got it. And if you could tell me, we've had very small cost of living increases over the last few years, isn't that right?
That's correct. I think last year was 1.6.
Come again? I didn't hear you.
The last increase is 1.6.
Yeah, so that's when it would tick in if you did a 3.5% cap. You do a good makeup that year. Okay, so now that I have a better understanding of it, and I would concur that it's going to be very tough on small businesses, which is kind of where my focus has been tonight. So I would do it at a 3.5% cap along with the state, putting in a catch-up provision when market conditions allow. Not interested in a decrease. And I'd round up to the nearest nickel. Thank you.
Councilmember Goethals.
Same.
Okay. So I have concerns more for the working people who have in this county where studies indicate that it costs the average person to maintain a moderate standard of living here $36 an hour at one job. If you work one job, $36 an hour to be able to afford to pay rent and provide for all the necessities of life. This is a job that most likely does not provide health care, and so then a person will probably seek subsidy for that somehow through the county. The taxpayers will still be paying for that. They may need some help with food. The cost of living here is excessively high, as I think we're all aware of. Everybody acknowledges that. I have a couple of concerns. That's keeping up with the cost of living. I don't think a 3.5% cap is high enough, because if the cost of living is going up 8% next year, and who knows what it'll do the year after, the people who are affected most by that and have the most difficult time as a result of that are the people who are earning the least. And so I feel for small businesses, but what I know is that when I go out in the morning to a small business to buy a mocha in the morning, I pay $5.95 for a medium mocha, right? So I know that, and I've watched those prices go up and up and up, and businesses do what they do. They adjust, so they're not going out of business, so they're not going broke. And some people may choose not to indulge themselves in some things, but I think most people still want to. People are creatures of habit. They'll go get that mocha. They still go to wherever they go to get whatever they need. They're still going to get their shoes repaired if the guy has to pay his helper an extra 90 cents an hour, I think, if there's a 5% increase over the minimum wage. So I just feel like the businesses will take care of themselves. The workers don't have any other way to take care of them. There's nobody else to help them. It's us, okay? And if we don't, nobody else will. Some employers realize that if they want to get the help they need, they pay more. That's why you see those signs that say $18 an hour, because they recognize that they're not going to get anybody to work there for less. And I think the same is happening, and it's becoming true for small businesses, which makes it harder for them to stay in business also. I think there's a type of negative thinking here where you think you're saving yourself by trying to keep your costs low, but you're hurting yourselves by limiting your labor pool. And so I disagree. I think that I would go with the 5% cap with the catch-up provision, no negative CPI, and I would round to the nearest nickel. And for all those reasons. And I hope that maybe some of what I heard is heard by some people, because like I said, there's nobody else to take care of the low-wage people, to speak on their behalf but us here now. Thank you.
Thank you. So just to make sure I got all the information correct, it sounds like a majority of the council members are interested in a 3.5% cap with a catch-up provision. everyone's in favor of not decreasing the minimum wage if there's a negative CPI, and that we should round up to the nearest nickel. Okay, great. Well, that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And now off to item 23, Transit-Oriented Development Pedestrian Access Plan Update. Here we have some of our public works staff with Sue Ellen, and we have Nicolette Chan.
Honorable Mayor, council members, and members of the public, thank you for having us tonight. And I'm Nicolette Chan, Assistant Transportation Planner, and next to me I have Sue Ellen Atkinson, who is our Principal Transportation Planner, and we're both with the Public Works Department. Tonight we'll be providing an update on the Transit-Oriented Development Pedestrian Access Plan. And now I'll pass it to Sue Ellen to introduce the project.
Hi, good evening. So the project goal for the TOD Pedestrian Access Plan is to increase the safety and comfort for pedestrians within the city's transit-oriented development areas and near high-quality transit to encourage them in walking to transit. This plan will identify capital improvement needs and projects that can improve the pedestrian conditions. So basically what we're trying to do is support those who are living and working in the TOD areas or areas that are designed as TOD in actually walking to and using transit. This does align with current City Council priorities and goals around pedestrian safety. So again, we're not focused just on the areas that are zoned as TOD, we're focused on the areas that are built in a transit-oriented development way. So that includes around our downtown San Mateo Caltrain station, around the Hayward Park Caltrain station, and also our newly relocated Hillsdale Caltrain station. That did not work. There we go. All right, so in this analysis, we're marrying a data-driven approach with community input. So here's an example of some of the data analysis that we've done over the course of this project. We've looked at land use, current land use, we've looked at collision data, and we've also looked at the typology of the different roadways, geography, what's currently on the ground around all three of our Caltrain stations. We've also done an extensive community engagement effort. We first developed outreach goals that helped us develop a plan for outreach at the outset of the project. Those goals were really to inform the community, to engage with the community, and to listen and build trust. We first presented the community engagement plan to the S&I Commission in August 2021. As part of that outreach plan, we developed a multi-pronged approach. This was also done during the height of the pandemic, so we did a lot of this through online engagement, through meeting with focus groups at their already scheduled Zoom meetings, and then we were able to do pop-up events in the community, which was really excellent. So just a few highlights from outreach. We were able to engage at various locations out in our downtown and around our Caltrain stations and engaged with about 70 some odd community members. We had an interactive online map that got a number of comments. We launched a survey that also got responses, and we had a project webpage. And with that, I'll hand it back to Nicolette.
Thank you, Sue Ellen. Next is prioritization, which was needed to identify locations within the study area where projects would be located. We developed these metrics shown on the right-hand side and assigned each one a weight according to how closely they align with the project goals. The results from the prioritization process are shown on the heat map to the right. The purple lines and purple dots represent the priority locations that resulted. From the heat map, we then developed priority project areas for each of our 3 study areas. In the downtown, you can see here we have 3 project areas, and they are El Camino Real, North Station Access, and the Downtown Gateway. For each project area consists of a group of improvements that can be implemented separately from one another. This gives us better flexibility with implementing improvements while still focusing on achieving the goals of that project area. Cut sheets like the one shown here were included in the staff report as an attachment, and there is a glossary to explain the icons shown on these cut sheets. I'm going to review just this one cut sheet, but we do have the rest of the cut sheets available in our slides to bring up after this presentation if needed. Each cut sheet shows one project area and the improvements in that area, comfortability and connectivity of those streets that are north of the Caltrain station so that those pedestrians feel safe and comfortable. Those pedestrians coming from the north feel safe and comfortable getting to transit. I do want to highlight one of the issues from this project area is it is difficult to access this Caltrain station, specifically coming from the northeast direction. You'd have to walk south of the Caltrain station to First Avenue, then double back. So because of this issue, one of the improvements we're recommending is adding a new station entrance at Railroad and Cypress on the east side of the Caltrain tracks to make a more direct route for those pedestrians coming from the northeast direction. With this new station entrance, Cypress Avenue becomes a very valuable walking route to transit. So we've included a number of improvements for Cypress Avenue, including converting it to a one-way westbound street and improving lighting and wayfinding. There are a number of ways that the improvements from this plan will be implemented. The TOD pedestrian access plan will be its own standalone plan, and it'll also be incorporated into the city's complete streets plan, which will look at existing transportation-related master plans to ensure that when we design and improve our roadways, we take a complete streets approach. There are also a number of ongoing projects right now that we can include these improvements for implementation. A couple of those are listed here, which are the Hillsdale Gap Closure Project, which is a grant-funded project for the roadways around Hillsdale Caltrain Station, and then our local road safety plan. As part of the implementation strategy, we're also identifying funding for improvements, and some of those sources for funding that we will be considering are listed here. Next up, in addition to looking at potential funding opportunities, we'll also develop cost estimates for project areas and prepare CEQA documents. The draft plan is expected to be complete this fall, and we'll present this draft plan to the SNI Commission this September and anticipate coming back to Council for adoption this November. Thank you. Myself and Sue Ellen are available to answer any questions you might have, and we also have our project consultant, Matt Goyne from Fair & Peers, who is available via Zoom.
Thank you very much. Council members, do we have questions? Okay. Then, yes, we have a question. Thank you.
Well, this was the best report I've ever read from the city. And I think the data approach and the community input process was really, it was a real standout for me. And then those two things in combination, and then the way it was synthesized through the report was like the perfect balance of really granular detail, but also like really high level summaries. So I devoured this report, all 120 pages. I guess like my question is, like for me, this set a standard, and I'm wondering, what went right here that we took this approach with, and how did this kind of come about, and how can we replicate it?
I think something that was really helpful was before we even began outreach, we conducted preliminary interviews with representatives from different community groups, and they gave us the insight on how to approach and get the most participation from that community group. And so that's really what drove us to choose the outreach methods we chose to, determine what times we're going to do pop-up events and that sort of thing. So I think talking directly to the community about how can we reach them and your community really helped us shape the outreach for this project.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any other questions? No, then I guess we can go on to public comment.
I have no speakers in the room. On Zoom, I have Rayanne Monteshimi. Rayanne, please unmute yourself.
Thank you so much. Good evening, Council. Honorable Mayor Bonilla, thank you very much. Much like Councilmember Lee, I was very excited to read this report and see all of the amazing progressive and forward-thinking transportation solutions called for. I would say kudos to Sue Ellen and Nicolette for all of your hard work on managing this process and working on it and finding the funding to get a consultant to work on this, because I know you both have incredibly full plates as it is, and it's amazing that you were able to work to put this together. I think that this really lays out a great vision for transit-oriented locations in our city and in near transit and the pedestrian improvements that we need for those kinds of to make our cities transit-oriented areas really thrive. I would say that there's a lot of technocratic as well as capital improvements suggested here that will really, make that difference. So I think a lot of even the smaller technocratic shifts are actually going to be just as impactful as a lot of the other capital projects. So I'm excited about that. Some things especially, and I haven't, been able to read absolutely everything, but I think that calling for looking at how to make El Camino safer is a longstanding goal for many people. And I think that to the extent that this plan really goes into and recommends improvements for El Camino Real in these transit-oriented areas, that's something we should be paying attention to. I like the idea calling for a road diet through downtown. I think that will help make El Camino more walkable, safer to cross. Auto recall for pedestrian signals is going to be exciting so that you don't have to remember to push the push button and don't get caught at an intersection when the light turns green, having to cross quickly. These little things will really help seniors and other pedestrians with mobility issues cross one of our most dangerous streets. I support the northeast entrance to San Mateo Caltrain. I think that is a long time coming, and I look forward to seeing that project developed. I'm fingers crossed. I also think it's great that there's a lot of daylighting proposed at various intersections. I recently read an article that studied the city of Hoboken, New Jersey, and that article noted that they haven't had a single traffic fatality in 4 years. And one of the main reforms they made is daylighting at intersections. I'd encourage the report to include adding a pedestrian crosswalk on the northern side of the intersection of Crystal Springs Road and El Camino Real. That's one thing I think could be added to this report. And I support the mid-block crossing and road diet at 28th Avenue called in the report, which is one thing that that kind of kicked off Move San Mateo's advocacy. So this is really gratifying. Thank you so much for all of the work that was put into this. And I hope to see these reforms implemented in the near future.
Thank you. We have no other speakers.
Okay, then I will close public comment period and bring it back to the council. Go ahead.
I would concur. This was outstanding. And when I went through the report, there are areas that I know in the city that are really troubling, and I'll be darned if they weren't in there. And then I'd look for another one, and it was in there too. So it covered so many hot spots that I myself either deal with daily. One is this left turn right where your kid goes to school, and there was an opportunity there I remember calling Larry Patterson years ago and going, can we get rid of this? We just can't have a left turn there. So in any event, I was delighted to see how thorough the report was. It was easy to read, and it's going to serve us very well going forward. So I have a lot of gratitude for how comprehensive and precise it was. So thank you, thank you.
Thank you very much.
I'll just say I concur. Excellent job. Thank you.
Councilmember Goethals? Yeah? Well, and you already spoke? You're good. Okay, well, I just want to say thank you for the great effort. I think the outreach that was described was excellent. A lot of interesting new techniques I haven't seen used before, so I really applaud that. Outreach seems to be where we fall down sometimes, so I want to make sure that we do better on that, and I'm proud of the efforts that were made here. Any and all efforts that we can make, especially, I know one I've heard repeatedly is access to the downtown Caltrain station from the north end, that people from North Central have had to go all the way around the station to get to the station. So that's great. I always tell everybody that our streets are only as safe as the ability that an aged or a handicapped person has to be able to maneuver safely, and be visible and be respected by motorists. That's the big thing. The big struggle, a lot of the big struggle here is having motorists respect bicyclists and pedestrians. There seems to be this prevailing thought that, well, I'm in a car. Get out of the way. So that's what we really have to deal with. There is a big attitude problem. And so much of what human beings have to deal with has to do with their attitudes about different situations. So without rambling on about that, I want to say that I applaud your efforts. And I thank you, and I think you're on the right track. So unless we have anything else to say? No? Then we're going to move on. Thank you very much. And we're going to go to our last part here, which is reports and announcements. Does anybody have anything? Go ahead, Councilmember Lee.
Well, I am very happy to share that the City of San Mateo received a partnership award from San Mateo Foster City School District, and I was at the partners' luncheon to receive it on our behalf. And it says, in recognition of the outstanding efforts to ensure that each child in San Mateo has access to a public library card. So I think there are many other things that could have been written here, like it could have been a really long list, but the work from our library in that partnership, I think, is really well recognized by the students and families, and I hope that all of those students who now have Chromebooks will also have access to our e-library system as well. So, I think that's maybe another level of work that can happen too. So I wanted to share this with everyone, and we all deserve this credit. And I'm going to be passing it to our city clerk to hang.
Maybe we could have it hung in the library. Because they do a lot of fundraising and whatnot. So that's kind of a real tribute to their efforts, if that's okay with other folks. Oh, I think it would be cool. Okay.
Okay, that works for me. Any other council member?
I have another one.
You have another? Go ahead.
I do. Well, I think many of us have heard about the violent attack that our neighboring council member Anders Fung survived. Fortunately, he's from Millbrae, and many API members of our community have been targeted. Through racist attacks, and some of them violent, and many harassing, varying degrees. And the city of San Mateo in City Hall on Friday hosted the first kickoff event for the San Mateo County API Task Force, which was an effort to convene multiple stakeholders across all sectors of our community, including educators and business leaders and electeds and commissioners and as many as many folks that we can bring to the table, including our nonprofit service agencies, to create a cohesive and sustaining effort to combat anti-Asian hate. And so I'm very grateful for the people who have stepped up in the way that the city stepped up to offer up our space, and I look forward to sharing some updates on that.
Thank you. So I want to piggyback onto that. I want to say that hate crime and violence, all hate crime and violence, but especially Asian hate crime right now, because it's so prevalent here, is something that we can't accept. We have to know that this has to stop, that silence is violence. Right now, if we see or know, I want to say that actually harassment, which you mentioned, is a gateway drug to violence. If people get away with that, then they think they can get away with more. And I think we have to stop tolerating anything like that. So please be aware of that. And if you see something, say something. That's what we have to do, because many people who are subjected to harassment and violence don't say anything. So let's just make sure we let our police department know and say something to us council members so that we can try to find some way to make sure that all areas of the city where things might be happening that are unsafe become safe. That said, I have a couple of things that I want to kind of bring to the council tonight, because there were things that were discussed earlier while we were hearing the development project. And one was regarding what I heard talk about in the past, which was that we were working on developing a downtown transportation management agency. I know it was being looked at, but it seems, and like I mentioned earlier, with the increased level of development applications that we're seeing downtown, it seems as though there really needs to be more coordination. And I want to ask about, it seems as though the response I got today from one of our staff members was, well, that's not really being discussed or worked on at this time. And I want to ask, is there something we can do to actually start doing something with that?
I think at this point, we aren't working on it actively. Should council provide that direction, obviously we would add that to our plate. I think we would need to then look into the timeline of when we could get something done in relation to all of our other priorities. So we will await council direction and can go from there if there's a desire to pursue this.
Well, I want to ask council about that, because I think that right now we're doing things on a project by project basis, and I think there needs to be a coordinated effort. Our downtown is just too important for us to let it go piecemeal like that. And so I want to ask the council, do we want to ask the city manager if he can look into that and come back to us with some kind of a response? Transportation Management Agency, which would look at coordinating transportation as all the new developments are being proposed and brought to fruition in downtown. They each have their own impacts, and we're looking at them individually. We need to have some kind of core. And what a TMA does, actually, is it's a group of people who basically own the projects, and they're coordinated. They're allowed to have a certain number of trips in and out every day. If from time to time, those trips have to be measured to make sure these buildings are in compliance. If they're way out of compliance, then something needs to be done. And that's how we're going to maintain our circulation, the viability of our circulation, and keep our traffic moving downtown. It's what's happening at Bay Meadows right now. It was planned from the beginning. It came to be, it's working. If something gets out of whack, then the TMA looks at it and says, what do we do to bring this back under control? And I think we need to, if it's important enough to do it at Bay Meadows, it has to be important enough to do it downtown, where it's a very important atmosphere. People concerned about parking, and they're concerned about circulation because they say they drive around blocks to get places. They can't find a place to park. So if we can help manage the number of trips that are coming to and from different locations that are now being built with more users, then I think that would contribute in an organized way to maintaining that order. Anybody interested?
I think this it raises a really good good point, and I think a sort of a lingering, outstanding question for me about the downtown area and how we're managing sort of our parking analysis and the TDMs by project and how that may or may not be factored in. At this point, it was not factored into the parking analysis. So I think that there are definitely, for me, areas of improvement. I don't know enough about a TMA to say that, like, that's the right solution, but it's something that I'm curious to learn more about. And I think that the point is well taken that that downtown is growing, and we want to take a comprehensive view of the area and parking and circulation needs. And so I'd certainly say that's a priority, and I'm not sure where that is currently owned or being held.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
I just wanted to add that if you look at downtown, it's Prometheus, it's Windy Hill, it's Harvest. It's only a couple, and I think that if we get some buy-in from them, this can become a priority in January. But those groups can't just have it imposed on them. They need to come to the process and give us some feedback. I think they would be very interested in what you're talking about if they're approached in a way that is collaboration. I think they will want to be a part of it. So I think it's an excellent idea. I just don't want to direct staff to impose that on everybody. I want them to come and participate and make it successful. So
Thanks, Joe. I wasn't suggesting just imposing, but I think that staff should seek to inform the council what it could be, right? And so that we know what we're even thinking or talking about. It seems like, I don't know whether the other parties on this side of the table are aware of what a TMA is and how it's impacting what goes on at Bay Meadows and what it might be able to do downtown.
Well, as I understand it, Bay Meadows was required to have a TDM, right? And tonight...
There is a TMA in place there.
But they were required to have a transportation demand management program in place. Tonight, Windy Hill volunteered to do one, but it wasn't required, right? So it's not that I'm adverse to it. I just don't know if every project is going to be required to do it. And so then if they're not required and they don't want to do it, then we develop a TMA that if you don't have a transportation demand management program that you are required to do, we're managing something that somebody's not required to do. So it's a little bit of maybe cart before the horse because I don't know what those other projects will entail. So that's why I've been sitting here quietly kind of thinking in my mind, well, we had a volunteer for one tonight. Bay Meadows was required. I don't know about the other ones. So that's why I'm just a little bit, I have reservations. Not to say I wouldn't look into it, but I'm just, as I understand the requirements of these different projects, it may not totally fit. That's all.
I see the city manager wants to have a few words.
Yeah, I think as an initial step, we can do some preliminary analysis on what could be done, right? What we're allowed to do, what would have to be voluntary, and bring that back at some point with a study session. And then, if there's council interest in moving forward, I think at that point we could get deeper in with the development community about what that might look like. So if there's interest, we can put that on our list of to-dos to come back with a study session on what's available.
Thank you. And I just want to say before we go, you'll be right after. It would be our program. We design it. We set thresholds where participation might be required and below which it wouldn't be required. Different types of projects, like for instance, a new retail building on the corner of it's Ellsworth and 3rd Avenue. I think it's the Lane Partners have a building right there. That's the kind of building. It's not going to have a bunch of parking. It's going to have different kinds of impacts. It is a building that might not need to be included as a building that would participate in a TMA. Okay, so there are levels of function that you would need to consider. But anyway, go ahead, Eric.
So overall, I think that this idea has merits, and I think that we should eventually look into it. I guess for me, it's a question of when, and I know that staff has a full plate, and if we add this on, it's going to push off something at the end. I mean, it's not, we're not creating hours in a day. So to me, this sounds like something that should be prioritized and discussed in goals goal session setting meeting in January, unless there was just some urgency where we had to get on it like ASAP, and I'm not seeing that urgency. I think that this should be discussed in goal setting and then prioritized with everything else in the current process. So that's where I stand.
Yeah, thank you. So I just want to say that, yes, staff's plate is full, and we don't even know how full it is. There are development proposals for downtown areas that we don't even know about.
It's 100% full. So if you add something else goes back. So then what are we going to do, a study to see what falls off?
I know. I'm just saying, though, that we need to be prepared for things that are coming. That if we don't at least get somehow a cart in front of a horse here, or the other way around, horse in front of a cart, then, we may find ourselves later wondering, why do we not do anything? So that's all. And I appreciate the city manager's comments. He's willing to look into it and bring something back to us at least. Thank you very much. Okay, I had one other thing. There was a suggestion that we don't really have a policy to incentivize developers to include bike and ped improvements in their projects. I know that most likely would have to be something that would come in January, right? But I think that we need to at least think about that's something that we want staff to start thinking about, because it seems as though these issues come before us, and it seems like the bike and pedestrian issues around projects are in motion. They're not settled. Things are written, but then things change, and we saw that tonight. There was a written policy, but then that changed, and so there was a lot of confusion over it. And I think that also, we don't have all the money in the world for doing this. There's some way, though, I think that we could incentivize developers to actually be proactive and take these things on and pay for them as part of their project, where their part of their project is impacting these infrastructures. So I just want to add, Mr. City Manager, do you have any thoughts on that?
I think similar to the last issue, it's something we're not actively working on. We don't have a comprehensive policy, as was discussed. The development of these policies, I think, takes longer than what most people would think, because we're going to go out and we want to do outreach. We want to try to understand the full issue. So I think just similarly with the last issue, it comes down to prioritization as where does this fit. We're heading in 2 weeks 2 weeks away from the new fiscal year when we will begin work on our new set of priorities, of which there are 55. 51 of them are A-level. So we have a lot, and I think some of the things that we're talking about tonight with like the bike and ped and with the TDM and the TDA is, or the TMA, excuse me, are things that are at least have some nexus to some of the existing things that we're doing, so they're not sort of out of line. But nevertheless, like the creation of these policies, it takes time, and the staff is very busy. We have a lot going on, and then there's the keep the business running work that we have to do the day-to-day. So it's really a matter of prioritization. In September, we are going to come back with a study session on where we are with the strategic plan, and because we put together the work plan for this year that council approved. I think that would be an appropriate time to discuss these items in the context of the overall strategic plan, because if these things become a higher level of importance than certain other things, we can have the discussion with council about how do you want to reprioritize the work.
Okay, thank you. I just want to say that the only reason I bring these things up is because I feel it will help us if we're more organized in our approaches to these things.
Understood.
Over the long term. Okay, thank you very much. And with that said, if there's nothing else, we'll call this meeting adjourned.